So I've been seeing this on TikTok a lot, and I've been having a lot of people reach out to me lately and be like, "Papa Gut, can you talk about JonTron?" And you know, when people will pop in the stream, they'll ask me, and they send me this video here, which we're gonna watch. I've watched it already, but we're gonna watch it again. They keep saying, "Papa Gut, like, Grump, shut up." And I'm like, this happened a while ago, and JonTron apologized. So why would we talk about this? So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna come on today, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about this debate from what I remember. And then I'm going to show people the apology. However, in my search for an apology, it doesn't exist. I don't know why I thought he apologized. I looked up in an article, and his apology was really just him. Like, it was a really sly way of him doubling down. Not even sly. Like, the article had written it as if it was an apology. I guess I just read the headline a few months ago. But he was really just doubling down. I'm like, wait a minute. So I looked into it, and then I found a statement on H3 where he talks about it. It's very short. It's only 4 minutes. And then I found this unlisted video of his statement, which he never pulled. He never privated it. He just made it unlisted, and it's from the JonTron show. So, listen, I understand things happened a long time ago. And then I looked at his Twitter, and I'm like, he's being a little like, let's go to JonTron's Twitter. I'm fucking so sore today. JonTron. I looked at his Twitter, and like, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Like, listen, I'm fine with questioning the system. I don't know. Some of it makes me a little uncomfy. Just to be clear, I'm not saying you shouldn't get vaccinated. That should be your choice. I'm also not saying the vaccine is unsafe. I want the best for everyone. I'm concerned. Like, I understand that. That's fine. But then, like, some of those Facebook articles he posts seem a little bit suspicious. I don't know if they're verified or not. I don't know. I don't even think he's a bad guy. Anyway, whatever. We're getting off content. Let's just watch this thing that I keep seeing on TikTok and just start this segment off, okay?
People like me are supposed to listen to people like you chatter on about this oppression in America. It doesn't exist. Wealthy blacks also commit more crime than poor whites. That's a fact. Yeah.
It's not even funny, but I'm like, holy shit. Bro, I used to watch JonTron, and like, I enjoyed his content. And it's just so weird, because, you know, for him to be the one talking about this shit. It's so weird. You know what's weird? I know the vicinity around where JonTron lives. I was on vacation one time, and I was talking to somebody at an Applebee's, and they were like, "Papa, got it." And they're telling me, and they're like, "Oh, JonTron was here once, and I know where." I was like, "All right, don't tell me where he lives, motherfucker. What are you doing? Don't tell people where I live." Anyway, yeah, you know, so that whole like wealthy blacks, wealthy white thing, you know, we can get into it. I looked at the statistics, and you could really interpret it two ways. You could either say that, oh, well, affluent black people are more violent, or you could look at it as that the system, there's an implicit bias in the system that charges like wealthy black people more than wealthy white people. So, like, you know, there's two different ways. I would tend to go with the latter. You know. I mean, I imagine unless the mentality is that like black people are inherently more violent. I don't know. Which I don't think is true. Anyway, let's first watch the H3, the way that he responds to H3, because it's very important, and then we're gonna watch what he said.
Where were we? Well, that was a hoot. All right, let's switch tracks here.
Okay.
Let's get this out of the way.
Yeah.
It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. I was wondering what the fuck that was.
Oh yeah, no, he's been awful. Just so
that's
intrusive.
terrible. He called Ela an elephant. That's horrible.
You had an infamous debate.
Yes.
With somebody that got you into a lot of hot water. It happened. How long ago was that now?
I don't know what it is. And I'm not like shitting on Ethan or anything, but it's like so weird. Nobody wants to mention Destiny's name. I don't really understand it. I don't know why Destiny is like a fucking like. Why is he like a pariah? Why Destiny is like a fucking social pariah here. Anyway, oop, no one.
I don't keep track. I don't know. Like a year or so.
I don't. Wow, has it been that long?
Like 9 months or something.
Anyway, like there was a lot of backlash and a lot of people upset about what you said in it. And I guess my question is because I don't want to get too deep into it because this is a fun, lighthearted time. I don't want to debate anything.
Oh, because people would search it up. Well, I mean, you know, you say some dumb shit, you should be accountable in some capacity. It's okay to say dumb things as long as you apologize.
I don't want this to be anything negative at all. So if you're uncomfortable with anything, like you don't have to comment at all. Like I know you've moved past it and it was a really hard time for you.
Yeah, I'm sure people want to know about this, so I just get it out of the way. Because
I wonder how Ethan would have said this today, because I feel like what JonTron said was pretty bad. I wonder if Ethan would be like, I know that you moved past it. I know that you're the victim. I'm like, that rhetoric was pretty rough, man.
I haven't talked about it since then for good reason. I don't really want to get into this. It's a minefield of sorts. I'm not going to go back and nitpick everything I said and say and qualify it or anything. All I'm going to say is that in that moment I was going into something that I needed a lot more time to prep for. I just went in guns blazing because you get a little arrogant sometimes. I guess you think like.
So that the first thing I want to point it out is because what he's saying is that he went into it without preparation. That's not saying like, oh, I said bad things. It's saying that I wasn't able to effectively communicate the things I was trying to say. I'm
going to take this guy to task, but like obviously I understand like why people had the reaction that they did. It's not as if I look back at some of that and I'm like, why the fuck did I say that? Like this is no matter what, right or wrong, this is a fucking bad look there. I'm aware of that, but it's pretty simple. Like, I'm not really going to get into it, but I guess the main question on everyone's mind is, is he a racist? Is he a Nazi? Simple answer, and this is what everyone wants. I mean, no, I treat every single person with the same respect they afford me. So, I felt bad about the incident in a sense, but like, I also just feel bad that we can't talk about these things without witch hunting each other.
Right.
So, like, listen, I understand the sentiment of like just general respect and everything. I totally get it, but and this comes down to a more complicated conversation about the way that you think versus the way that you act. Because there are people who think and have racist thoughts, and I don't think that there's anything inherent. Well, there's not good. There is something wrong with it. But I think that if you're somebody with racist thoughts, but you don't express those thoughts, and you do your best to police your thoughts, and when it comes to your actions, treat everybody as equally as possible and move past your biases, that's, I think, more important than having the thoughts, because you really don't control your thoughts. It's more about controlling your actions. So I get that. I'm sure he treats people all the same and with respect and whatnot. But when it comes to the general idea of people that are not white, this is where the problem kind of comes in.
Right.
Because, that's basically my full statement.
Okay. I mean, do you feel like you said some things that you regret?
Yeah, I could have phrased a lot of that better.
Yeah, it could have phrased it better. It's not that he said things he regrets. He wish he could phrase. And this, we need to get through this. We need to frame the situation.
Thing was, just to put it in perspective,
because that I'm going to do my, like, if I see somebody that says something ignorant, but I understand what they're saying, I'm going to try to do my best to express it in like the most contextually appropriate light. And that's why I'm building this up, because that doesn't exist.
For you, the second I went into that stream, it was an instant bump, bump, bump moment. Right. Curb Your Enthusiasm. I was thinking to myself, would it be weird if I just was like, sorry, Mike's breaking up? Yeah, no, I don't like reliving it. No, I don't.
Did you have a lot of self-aware moments during that?
Of course, the whole time.
You're just like,
I was like, I should not be here.
I was wondering that.
I was like, I'm not the person.
No.
I was like, I'm not the person to fight this battle.
Right.
I know you guys are asking, what does he do? But like, you're gonna be a little mind fucks when we get to
Well, let me just say for the record, like that I disagree with a lot of the stuff you said.
Fair. Fair. Me too.
But I still think like if you genuinely feel a certain way, or some people genuinely feel a certain way, the correct way to deal with it is not to like prevent them from saying it.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of that.
We should be able to fucking talk about it. Like, even if
what happened to this Ethan? Because the things that JonTron said were like rough.
Strongly disagree. And even if I'm like, dude, that's fucked up. But I think that we should still be able to talk about it. I mean, I don't know. It's so tricky. Like,
it's tricky.
Is it an impossible task for someone as a fan? If you say something they really disagree with, is it an impossible task for them to be like, I'm trying to get in mind. I really disagree with that. I hate what he said, but I still love him as a person and as an entertainer. I guess that's a timeless question.
Yeah.
You know what's really I want to say though too is that I watched it and Destiny wasn't super aggressive on him. He was holding him accountable, but it wasn't like he was like, no, you're terrible. He was like, no, this is why you're wrong. So he had every opportunity too. It wasn't like the fucking mob came after him. I guess the backlash is what he's referring to more.
Yeah, well, that's been through the ages, But,
right.
But at the same time, I really just think that I really don't want to get into this. I would like to move on as quickly as possible because I just really don't want to get into this. But I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say the
I don't want to get into this, but
current social climate's insane.
Yeah, for sure.
And the only way we'll ever get past it is just talking about stuff. I just want to make people laugh. That's really. I'm not trying to get back into this. But people always ask me this. I just put it to bed. I treat my answer was I just treat people with the same respect they give me at the end.
Right.
That's cool.
Want to hurt anyone?
Yeah.
That's me.
All right. So we got through that. Now let's get through his response. He has this unlisted. This is quite literally on his channel, on the JonTron show. This is his response. He hasn't posted in a while. I watched this Juice one. It was okay. It wasn't like that great. It was all right. I think this might have been around the time I actually watched this Destiny thing for the first time.
Well, this certainly has been an interesting week. So recently, as you may have heard, I had a public debate about some contentious topics relevant to the day. I blew up in the media, and they wrote some, charitable articles on me.
JonTron gives gamers a bad name. Well, by being unabashedly racist? Wow, I didn't even know that was a word. Let's be honest, though. Gamers are fucking racist. Like, I just want... Let's be very clear here. And I don't care if all you little gamer fucking COD nerds get mad at me. because I was a gamer too. Gaming is like one of the most regressive online spaces that you could ever exist in. It's getting better, but it's terrible. Okay, gamers are racist and they're sexist. I don't even care if you even get angry at that, because I was a gamer too. And I am ashamed of the way that I used to speak and act. And so like it's shitty. And then you look at the way that like gaming companies treat their fucking employees, like women, it's terrible. Look at Blizzard. Look at like Riot. These are not good. These are not good social spheres for women. And the online communities, if you're a woman playing a game and they find out, there's one of two responses. Either I want to fuck you and I'm going to simp for you, or you are a worthless fucking cum rag. Those are the only two ways that you would see online, the way that gamers treat women. It's either like fucking like super, like nobody just says like, oh, it's a girl, who cares? Nobody treats them like a fucking person. Okay, and it's getting better, but like I'm just keeping it hunted. I'm keeping it hunted, dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being, you know, I'm just being honest.
So I feel like I need to come out and say something. Staying silent doesn't really feel right, so I'm just going to address this here and now.
I
understand that I wasn't prepared for a debate of this sort with these kinds of sensitive topics at hand adequately. I was a bit all over the place, and I said a lot of stuff that could be misconstrued in all sorts of ways.
No.
Things are being extracted from this that
maybe it couldn't be.
I know, I don't think. I was in there under a lot of pressure that I'm not used to being under, and as it became clear, I suck at debate. So now
I'm sorry, but like all I'm really focused on is this here. Like, for whatever reason, this is, like, fucking me up. Like, I just keep seeing the back of his head. I'm just focusing on it.
Haphazard, offhand remark I made in the heat of the moment is being dissected and speculated on. So I'd like to clarify. I was trying to speak to the increasing tribalization of our culture. These days, we're taught to think in explicitly racial or ethnic categories or in terms of gender or sexual orientation. And I think this in itself plays a big hand in what's gotten our country to the volatile state that it's in.
Now, that's a reasonable statement to make by itself. For sure. We are engaged in a lot of identity politics. I think that sometimes it can be very distracting. It can hurt the social, like our conversations. But also,
the simple point I was trying to make is that it's hypocritical for those who see everything in terms of race to suddenly turn around and object when white people speak up in what they believe are the best interests of their race.
It's instantly just shit out. Listen, okay, I'm not gonna get all woke here. Right. Yeah, based. Very based. Thank you, JonTron. Okay, listen. I understand kind of what he's saying, right? Different identity groups are advocating for themselves, so white people should be able to do the same. The difference is that generally speaking, as a whole, white people aren't impacted by systemic oppression, right? If I interpret it as the only real arguments I think that you can make as a white person on like to advocate for white people are like, hey, listen, I'm not comfortable with the social atmosphere saying I'm racist for everything. That, I think, is a perfectly fair thing for white people to say. Like, the redefining of the term racism to exclude white people. Listen, I understand like all the rhetoric around why people want to do that. But the end of the day, a lot of people are using it just to be prejudiced at white people. Like, it's not, a lot of people aren't doing it from an educated perspective to try to have a social commentary about how race is a social construct and like the differences in the ways that people are treated. A lot of people like to use that to be prejudiced at white people and say, well, I can't be racist. So like, that's a reasonable way to advocate for like white people, is to say like, hey, listen, I think that that's wrong. But like we're going to show what he was talking about. It's not the same thing. Because that's like a very, I would say, my point that I'm making is like a very minor, like, I suppose like a nuanced point. It's not like this whole critique of like, hey guys, we need to make sure we keep Hispanic and black people out of the country to maintain our white majority. Because that's effectively what JonTron was saying, and we'll get into it.
And it's also hypocritical to keep saying you want to have an honest conversation about race if you don't actually want to have an honest conversation about race. And anytime someone brings up an uncomfortable statistic, you freak out and burn things down or something. And I mean, you can see this in all the countless media articles that get pumped out.
Admitting that white privilege helps you is really just congratulating yourself.
Every day from the highest levels.
Racist is one of the most triggering words for white people.
For instance, you can't be racist.
Please stop pretending reverse racist. But this is the problem, is like, so we have these ridiculous, some of these articles do have like ridiculous headlines. Of course all white people are racist. Like, it's just a dumb thing to suggest, because it means that racism means nothing if everybody's racist. But like, the reactionary response from JonTron is to be racist rather than to just, like, my perspective, like, that's just dumb. If everybody's racist, then the word racist loses all of its meaning. right? You're just trying to simplify everything when it's more complicated. That's why we have to separate individualized racism versus systemic racism, so we can have more nuanced conversations, right? But that's my reaction. I think that's a reasonable reaction, not like, hey, white nationalist pride
against white people, or it's a good thing whites are going to become a minority, or you see it on TV when someone as mainstream as Samantha Bee says white people ruined America for voting Trump.
You know what's weird though? Like if you are, this is what, you know what's so funny to me? If you believe that white, so I think the statistic is like by 2045, white people will be like 49% of the population. Spooky. Ugh. If you're afraid of that, right? Ask yourself a question. So if you're afraid of white people no longer being the majority in America, then really you're just acknowledging that being a minority in America is bad, which means that you realize that minorities are treated badly in America. Which kind of, like, which is something that people tend to ignore.
It's pretty clear who ruined America. White people.
I suppose you could guess the reaction if Samantha Bee said black people ruined America for voting overwhelmingly for Barack Obama, which they did both times. I'm not saying that's true, but the same standard applies.
Well, I think that Samantha Bee probably wouldn't think Barack Obama ruined America, so, okay.
The point I was trying to make, albeit indelicately, is that you can't keep banging the racial category drum and then be surprised and shocked when people think in racial categories. And just for the sake of total...
Honestly, I'm just going to make sure that my kids they marry black people so that their kids aren't white, and then they're protected. And they'll be totally fine. That's all I have to do. I'll be totally fine. I'm just going to make sure that they that they date outside their race. And then they'll have a mixed baby, and that baby, because you know, like if a white person has a baby with a black person, the baby's black, right? So then we're set, we're fucking saved. My family will be saved, and we won't have to worry about any more prejudice.
For clarity, I do completely understand that historically the African American community has had a raw deal in this country. Discrimination certainly exists, but I do believe it goes all ways. I'm not naive to the fact that we, as a country, have had a terrible history of dealing with race. I mean, of course, from slavery to Jim Crow to even the Irish. But the point is that this kind of discrimination...
Come on. I mean, yeah, the Irish got a raw deal too, but come on. You got to make sure you throw a white group in there.
Discrimination is universally wrong, and I feel like, for some reason, we're regressing on this front. Pointing at a race and saying all of this race is blank is racist. And I have to be honest, I don't see many people losing their jobs over this kind of garbage. And I'd like to make it clear, I have no problem with immigration when it's handled correctly. I should have made it clear, I was mostly speaking to mass immigration. I'm literally a child of two immigrants. It would be pretty heinous of me to say that immigration is impossible, because it's not. You know, I brought all this stuff up offhand in a random Twitch stream late at night, so I understand why people looking at this think I'm some sort of explicit ethno-nationalist, but I'm not. I genuinely believe this country would be better off if we dropped the hyphens and just all referred to each other as fellow Americans. And for a number of years now, it's been disheartening to me to see this strange road we've been headed down.
Me too. I think that we need more American identity. The problem is that one of the reasons that we're losing American identity is because people don't feel like they can identify as Americans, right? Like, think about this. If you have people kneeling for the national flag anthem, Colin Kaepernick, right? It is a fundamental freedom to protest. He's doing everything he's allowed to do. And he got shit on and called un-American for expressing an American thought and for expressing himself as American and utilizing his constitutional right. And that's the problem, is that when people will utilize their American rights, their constitutional rights, they're called un-American. And it just furthers the divide. Now Colin Kaepernick isn't a black American. He's not American to people. That's one of the reasons why we're seeing the divide, because we have there are different groups in America, but there's, generally speaking, people in America where America works for them, and then there's people in America where America doesn't work for them, and the people where America works for them usually identify as Americans. I identify as American. It worked for me, but then there are people it didn't work for. And they're not proud of America because it didn't work for them. And that's the thing. And I don't think that as a society we're focused enough on making America work for everybody. Because if America worked for everybody, we would see more people identify as Americans. I know I'm simplifying this a lot, but I think that we also love to overcomplicate things. And I do think that if America was a happier place, we would be happier and we would more identify as American.
I really don't understand it. And you know, some of these topics have really been weighing on me, so I felt compelled.
Well, I don't think that identifying as American is a nationalist thing. It's more of like a patriotic thing. I'm not say America is the greatest country. I mean, I do think it is. I'm not saying that like you should fucking like hate everybody outside of America. There's no problem with having pride in your country and where you come from. People of all other countries do it. Have you talked to any Hispanic person? They love the country they came from. There's nothing wrong with that. That's like patriotism. Nationalism is like a whole other fucking beast where you're very exclusionary of people outside of your own fucking nationality.
Respond in some way, perhaps against my better judgment. I know people don't expect these kinds of things from me. So in summary, you know, I'm sorry if this has come out of left field for some of you. I hope this is
More
clear
like come out of right field. Get it?
at least a little bit, if you were curious what was going on. You know, any of the things in the stream that you considered weird sounding or off-putting, I probably agree with you that they were. So I hope you don't read too much into it. That said, I genuinely hope people keep debating, keep talking to each other, and keep learning. Honest, civil discourse without witch hunts is the only way we're getting out of this mess. I prefer to take a step back now, return to doing comedy. It's what I do better anyway. Thank you sincerely to all of you who've supported me through this ride. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to catch up on my new videos, you know where to find me.
Okay. Well, that was, again, that's unlisted. Now, the framing so far, I could understand people be like, Pop, that. Based on everything you've said to me, there's nothing wrong with what he said here, right? It sounds like people are just going after him on a witch hunt. He's just getting nay-nayed. Let's see. Even the like ratio is actually reasonably favorable. About, like, maybe around 80%, considering how polarizing this whole situation was. Of course, though, that's because we haven't watched the video yet. And I wanted to frame all that first because I wanted to show what his reaction to everything was first, before we watched the actual video. That's what I wanted to do. Now, this video here. It is a Destiny video from JonTron Destiny thing. I'm going to play a game while we do it. Like I was saying before, League of Legends is very regressive and hates women, and so that's why I like this game so much. I'm fucking kidding. Joke. Take a goddamn joke. I gotta pee really quick. Okay? I'll be right back. Okay? Oh, wow. The like ratio is terrible. Ugh. You guys like that song that I'm jamming to? Can you guys hear me? Whew. The chair's having a JonTron moment. You guys are fucking out of here. Okay. Yeah, JonTron's like a fun memer. He's like Donkey, I guess you could say. All right, fellas. So this is the Destiny video. We're gonna play it on increased speed a bit. It says 2 hours long, but it's not. It's a lot of it's just him like in the aftermath. I'm more interested in him talking to JonTron. This actually, looking at this, the like ratio is terrible considering. I guess this was in 2017, so I'm assuming whatever. I guess people would thought that John were more comfortable supporting JonTron's take. I don't know. Well, anyway, let's just get into this.
Oof. All right, boys.
Is this really this low?
Oh, there we go. I think I can hear you now.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, how's the, is this mic quality good?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Is it echoey?
Okay. I'm going to probably turn myself.
Stephen Bonnell II, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the full name. You just completely doxed me, dude. What if my name was a secret?
You're even more handsome in person.
Well, thanks, I guess.
So what's up, man? What do you want to talk about? I know we got into a little spat today on Twitter. I have to say, I didn't expect today.
I love a good charming racist. My favorite. That's why people like me so much. Okay.
It wasn't really how I was expecting my Sunday to go, but you know, with life, especially these days, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's true. YouTube's more right-wing 2017. That makes sense. God damn it.
I guess it's kind of a brief overview of kind of what I told you. We've been talking about a lot of these issues recently on my stream, and not just on my stream, obviously across the entire world.
Yes.
You know, cultural issues and everything are at the forefront, both American and international politics, with Brexit and now with Trump in the United States. And yeah, it's kind of a lot of shit going on. The gaming community typically tends to lean a certain direction, you know, especially in a post-Gamergate world where you find a lot of certain things being said. And I noticed that it seems like you are kind of on a certain side of things when it comes to this kind of immigration and culture debate. And
I guess all I do. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say I know you have a very, very large outreach and whatnot, so saying you say some things was a little bit troubling. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't think it's troubling. I think it's actually pretty common sense. I think the fact that people think it's troubling is what's troubling to me, because I just don't see it as very controversial. Could you? And also, the only reason that I'm maybe on a quote unquote side is because in this day and age, staying on the fence is just useless, because everybody knows that you're just trying to avoid conflict at that point, because we are in very polarized times. So
it's so weird. Like, I understand staying on the fence is a lot of times people do that to stay away from like having to take a side. But I also feel like there's a lot of people who just don't have, like, aren't super emotionally invested in the topics, and they actually do see like a more common sense perspective. But you know, those are just dirty fucking, what are they called? Dirty middlemen. What do they call them?
I just like to at least state my opinion clearly. But what is it that you find so troubling?
I forget the
Let's
word.
start there.
So I guess it's kind of this general vague defense of Western, or more specifically like American culture. Basically, the problem I'm getting into is every time I read things, and I know that you're going to take extreme disagreement with this, every time I read things, what it always seems to boil down to
Hold on a second. Holy fuck. I have a goddamn ghost in my fucking house. Fucking cooking today. And I had the air fryer on, and the air fryer, it just popped out. I have a ghost in my house. Pisses me off. Turning myself down a
I think
little
that this
bit.
thing is better because it's majority white, and I don't want that to change. And
There
that's
we
like the
go.
most important thing. That's how it seems to read out to me that way.
Okay, so that is one way that you might look at the way that, I mean, obviously you can take that from it, but that's really not the core argument. The core argument is that no other nation would voluntarily change its demographics. Now, people say, oh, demographics, what do you mean? You know, it's not a white country or something like that, or demographics don't matter. But if this were true, they wouldn't have such an easy time turning around and identifying who's the problem, you know, the quote-unquote white male. They have no problem identifying it then. It's only
in terms of the problem, I mean, I think it depends on what particular thing you're talking about. But I guess, so to look at that first statement, so to kind of start this off, I'm not comparing us to any other country in the world. I think that the United States of America is relatively unique in its identity, and that we don't really have, and we don't have like an ethnic background that is tied to our country. Does that
I will say, this is what I want to say, bro. I remember when I was a little bit younger. I wasn't that young. And I used to watch Jon Stewart a lot. I don't know if you guys know who Jon Stewart is. Jon Stewart used to be like the host of The Daily Show. Jon Stewart. And I love this man. He's fantastic. If you ever look up Jon Stewart 9/11, the way he advocates for 9/11 survivors is incredible. He's a fantastic guy. And something he said really resonated with me, and it was that you know, we have a very polarized country because we have a very polarized country, but like the thing that makes our country so great is the fact that we are all very, like, we have different people in it. Like, our strength comes from, you know, basically our melting pot. So, and then we're a very unique country in the fact that we are so diverse, and it always like really stuck with me. I don't know. I just wanted to say that.
That makes sense? As in, like, we're not like, if you're from France, you can be French. If you're from Italy, you can be Italian, German. You can be German, Polish, like actual ancestry dating back hundreds of years. Typically, as Americans, we are Eurocentric, right, in our ancestry.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's the USA as the proposition nation, but you know, it is a European nation historically. There's just no debating that. When people try to debate that, yeah, there was obviously the slave population who lived here, brought here against their will.
So
they were emancipated.
The first thing that you just said doesn't really make sense. It was a European nation. Like in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, Italians and Irishmen were discriminated against, like, massively coming to the United States. Like, they were called. I think Irish people were called the inside-out Negroes. Like, it was like
they're still European though.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we didn't see it that way going back, you know, 150 years in the United States. It's like, well, they're European, they're okay. Like, that's not how we saw it. Like,
well, we weren't there at that time. I mean, I was born in 1990, well past my dad is Persian, my mom is Hungarian. I'm not even 100% white. I'm just saying this as a matter of fact. So when I see both.
Well, okay, so really the best thing he's saying is that, like, historically, we weren't always a European nation. I think we're always like an English. Well, we were all fucking, like, you know, I guess English, and then we slowly evolved, and new groups came in, and we considered them a minority, and we shit on them until new groups came in over and over again, and like now everybody's just white. But we were never a specific, like, Eurocentric country necessarily. We've always been a country that accepts immigrants, and at the time, you know, German people wouldn't be considered white. But they are now. But that's quite literally the only point that he's making is like we aren't like really a Eurocentric nation. We've actually always been very founded on immigration.
Bullshit. I just know it. And
But what do you mean by matter of
and guerrilla warfare?
fact? What I'm saying is that as time has gone on, we've seen more and more people be included in the identity of what it means to be an American. So it seems strange that today there's like this massive pushback on who can become included in that demographic. That just seems kind of strange.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Well, none of this would have ever been a problem had I guess you could call them the extreme left, started bringing identity politics to the fore. Because when you have a nation is supposed to be a people that are all bound by at least culture, if not genetics or whatever you want to say. So, we're all supposed to feel like we're one people. But they started doing this thing where they were like, well, if you're black, you're here. If you're white, you're here. If you're,
so again, like I know these are a lot of like hot button talking points. Like when you say the left started identity politics by assigning white and black to certain areas, I would say that Jim Crow laws probably assigned white and black people to different areas more so than a Black Lives Matter speaker or Obama talking about a racial issue. I don't agree with this narrative that all of a sudden the left has brought out, identity politics. Like if you talk to minorities in the United States, identity politics has been part of their national identity for the past, since the inception of the United States.
I just don't know that. Well, I just don't know that it's on the same level, especially because
it's not. It's on a much lesser level than it used to be. We don't have Jim Crow laws anymore. We don't. Women's suffrage happened.
You're right, and people still manage to create divisions between themselves.
It's interesting because like you can make an argument that some people on the left do weaponize like racial or identity politics in order to be divisive, but like that does pale in comparison. The reality is that white people are more forced to consider non-white people. And is uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable to be associated with a group that's been oppressive. And it's good that makes you uncomfortable because that means that you don't like that you used to be identify as a group that would be oppressive. But still.
Well, because there still exist divisions. Black people are disproportionately represented in prisons. Women are disproportionately represented in certain workplaces.
Okay, but the argument is that it's white people who caused them to be in those places. That's the implicit argument, not that they have any agency of their own to.
Who do you think was responsible for Jim Crow laws?
Well, of course it was white people. Of course, I'm not arguing for Jim Crow.
Okay, well, no, I'm just saying that when you say something like that, like, well, people are blaming white people, which is absurd. Well, I mean, if you go back 50, 200 years, yeah, it was kind of white people that did it. Now, I'm not saying that we need to lock white people up now or bring back reparations or anything, but it seems like the big problem, and I noticed this a lot because I watched pretty much an entire discussion with Sargon, is that I know that there are extremists on the left that want to play the blame game and do that fucking white guilt bullshit. I'm not into that shit. I'm not that extreme. Like white people need to, bow their heads and be solemn everywhere and recognize their privilege all the time. Like, I think that's stupid. But it's difficult sometimes to have a conversation about these topics when a lot of white people won't even acknowledge that they exist. When you get white people to say things like, well, I'm pretty sure I could go through your Twitter and find things like reverse racism is a real thing, and white genocide exists today in America, and everybody hates the white man. Like those are pretty charged statements when you have people that are alive today in their 60s who were legally discriminated against in their childhood. Like those are pretty extreme statements,
Well, if we are going to acknowledge one side, this is always a one-sided thing because if you don't agree,
really quickly, right? So like I understand the idea of individual like agency over yourself and having individual responsibility for things that are going on. I totally get that. But we do need to understand that as a country, like systemic racism exists. Now, I come from the place where the majority of systemic racism, in my opinion, is historical systemic racism, like our history of oppressing black people and denying them opportunity. But that has a profoundly negative impact on your development. Like how, when you don't have the same access to opportunity, especially in an atmosphere where jobs are disappearing every day to automation, how the fuck can you unoppress yourself? How can you find opportunity when like opportunity really doesn't exist in the same way? That's the biggest problem, is like that's it. So you're like, oh well, racism is over, Jim Crow's ended. This guy's gonna fucking steal this, I'm gonna cry. But realistically speaking, like what opportunities are like really afforded to you? Fucking get my ass fucked.
Agree that whites are the primary cause of dysfunction in certain communities. Like it has to stem back to Jim Crow. It has to stem back to slavery. Well, I don't know that these arguments can hold up decade after decade. So I think that's
wasn't that long ago though. Like when you say a statement like that, like that's
okay. But there's people who are like 18 years old who are committing a disproportionate amount of crime, and they were born after me. So how do you explain that? Is that Jim Crow?
So this is a tough one to explain, guys. So I just wanted you guys to know, my mommy is the reason I'm successful. Like I actually came from like a single mother, but she made decent money working for a business. So she was able to raise me, and I have ADHD, and I have Tourette's, and I'm dyslexic, et cetera, et cetera. But because she devoted her entire life to me, and she had the resources to do so, I turned out pretty well. And a lot of it's because of money. And so I know that's not like, imagine my mom didn't have money and didn't have a job that paid her well. I'm quite literally saying that was the difference between me being successful and not successful, is my mother not making enough money. And so like when we look at these types of things, it's like, okay, well, how do you explain the 18-year-old that came from the household with no money doing a bad thing? I don't know. How the fuck do you explain it? Oh, what a fucking hot take. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, Nobody wants to get into the realistic things. They say you want to have a conversation, but they don't really want to have a conversation. They just want to blame whites more and more. And the more
if you had a daughter that was 18 years old, would you send her to hang out with 400 guys that were all like known like fucking juggalos or people that rape people or whatever all the time? Would you have her hang out in that environment?
No,
Probably not, right? If you had a friend and he had 30 friends that were meth heads, right? Would you be happy with him hanging out with all of these people constantly? Like, no, probably not, right? But the argument I'm getting to is that your environment shapes you a lot, right? If you have a family that dates back, hundreds of years, if you've got parents that help you, parents that take care of you, like these things have a major impact of your life. If you have grandparents that were directly impacted by Jim Crow, you have parents that were born to people that were directly, discriminated against by the state. I mean, we're not that far removed from these issues. It's not like, well, my grandparents deal with this. Do we really have, we still deal with the Red Scare in the West,
Okay, well, the United Kingdom didn't have Jim Crow. France didn't have Jim Crow. We still have riots. We still have Muslim riots over there. And in Sweden, they didn't have Jim Crow. There's still riots in the streets of Stockholm and Malmo and wherever else. So you're telling me that?
I'm just speaking.
So at what point do we? So Jim Crow, one aspect of it here in America, but as far as the rest of the Western world, we don't have these same precedents. And there's
I only want to speak
in those communities.
I only want to speak in regards to the United States because everything else is way more complicated. You get into the histories of other countries and Islam and in the Europe and everything. That's all different countries, or that's all different countries and different topics. So in the United States, I'm not trying to say that no black person is ever responsible for any of their actions whatsoever. I'm just saying that it bothers me sometimes when I listen to internet celebrities get together and talk about how irresponsible black people are when so many of them are born to single parent households.
No. Like it's not as if we're saying like all black people are irresponsible. That's ridiculous. I mean, that is truly bigoted. I'm just saying, like, you can't make the argument that whites should be okay with them being becoming a minority in the countries that their ancestors built if it doesn't apply to other countries.
Whoa, we're going to way different. Hold on. White minority versus other countries. Okay, here, I'll write this down. We're not quite on that topic yet. I'm just saying that if you're not acknowledging that there are problems that exist in these communities, you'll never be able to fix it, right? And one of the big problems I had when I talked with Sargon was this idea that, like, black people just need to fix themselves. Like, I mean, sure, you can say that, but this is going to take a lot longer to get these communities on board when they were aggravated by white communities for so long. You can't just tell a group of people that have been...
Can I just say one thing? I know this is like I do find it like a little weird. It's a little bit like strange to me when like a bunch of white people get together and they have conversations about black people. It always makes me uncomfortable. And I understand it, but it's just like a little fucking bizarre.
Been oppressed historically in the United States for hundreds of years, over the course of a generation to just fix their shit. Like, it doesn't work that way.
I don't understand why it is anyone else's responsibility but their own. Do they not have agency? Why is it why should someone else deal with these problems? I mean, that's basically what people are asking of this.
Because we live in a civilization where we all help each other and we have to exist with one another.
Recently, we haven't been acting that way, have we? So
recently we have been. We live in an unprecedented period of human history where more people than ever are surviving childbirth, less people than ever are dying in natural disaster, more people than ever are moving into middle classes all around the world. That's not true. We've absolutely been helping each other. And the thing is, even if you're a selfish person, this benefits you. Why are you moving to the United States and not staying in Iran? Probably because there's more people doing well in the United States, so there's more opportunity for you here than there is in Iran, right? When the United States, when everybody in the U.S. does better, everybody does better, right? If black communities and Mexican communities get more money.
Of course.
So, well, you're saying of course now, but then earlier you're like, well, why should we help anybody else? Because you don't want to live in a shitty country.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're turning everyone against each other. And so.
Well, but you're saying that, but it's like, it feels like if you point out a problem, the right is so quick to go, well, hold on, you're turning us all against each other. Well, no, we're just acknowledging a problem, and now we need to fix it.
I would argue that. I don't know. I don't want to get too raunchy with this, but I think what I'm saying is that nobody would ask Japan if it was okay that Japan become a minority Japanese nation.
But we're not Japan, and I don't care about Japan. And also, Japan is one of the most racist fucking countries in the world.
I mean,
you want to be like Japan?
This word racist, sure. What does it mean?
It means that the Japanese people thought that they were the superior Asians, and it was part of the reasons why they were so keen to do that shit they did during World War II. Japanese viewed themselves as the superior Asian race, and every other Asian is being subservient to them. It doesn't get much more racist than Japan. You want to try to draw a parallel to another homogenous society. Japan is like the worst go-to argument. It's also a dying country of people who, because they refuse to let anybody else in, are having horrible problems with their population. Who, like, Japan has a lot of like world record-setting suicide rates. Like, I don't think Japan is the country that you want to point to as your model homogenous society.
I just disagree. I think it is a model society. I mean,
in what way?
See, look, it's happening now.
Because anime. Fucking cucked on that point, dude. That's why they're a model society, bro. Fucking anime, dude. Come on, bro.
I mean, what is it that's so offensive about white people saying they would like to preserve their demographic majority? I don't understand. It always gets into these semantics of
because
like,
I don't understand
that person.
Why is the skin color so important? And why would you drag the country down holding on to it? Like, there have been
I didn't start this shit now, did I?
Well, there have been contributions by other people to our country that are non-white. Why wouldn't we want to continue to foster this kind of behavior? Why would you want to close everybody down to like, white only?
I think human beings are at the core tribal, and they tend to want to stick to their own. I think it's completely natural, completely.
I mean, that's probably true. We are generally tribalistic. Human beings are tribalistic. What tribalism means, though, it really depends, right? So I would argue that tribalism isn't just skin color. That's the most superficial form of tribalism. It's like, what's your skin color or what's your ethnicity in some capacity? And then as people have different like identities, you know, like honestly, NASCAR tribalism, right? That's like you see people of, well, mostly white, because NASCAR is fucking weird, but you'll see people of all like races that enjoy NASCAR. They'll galvanize around that. A lot of time we galvanize around interest. The most superficial, and NASCAR is probably the worst one to go to. But our most superficial interests are our skin color, right? So like people will sometimes have like that superficial thing. But even though, regardless, even if that's your argument, it's like, oh, well, that's like a lot of people are tribalistic. Okay, but that doesn't make it a good thing, you know? Like it doesn't mean you should not be, if your fundamental argument is, hey, if people have particular desires and they should be able to act on those because they're biological. There are people who are attracted to children. By this logic, well, that should be totally fine for them to sleep with children because that's a biological imperative. No, we can acknowledge that there are bad things about our biological imperatives that need to not be a thing. I think being human is about being as non-animalistic as possible. That's the whole point. Humans are animals. What separates us from being animals is critical thought and common sense. Things that animals don't usually have.
Normal. And so
But you've already proven that statement wrong in what you're saying. Because you think you're a white person and you're half Iranian and, what did you say, Hungarian?
Yeah, Hungarian.
That wouldn't have been considered a white person 100 years ago. 100 years ago, Irish wasn't considered a white person.
I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about mass immigration. Like when they want to basically, you know, I mean, they've gone and they've said it on the DNC, what was it, like the DNC platform, they had that lady that was saying, you know, white people need to shut up and listen. Now, that's the kind of discourse we're looking at for the future of this country.
So, I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but again, you have... I mean,
kind of bad?
Well, to some, I mean, that's what I find myself saying to a lot of white people. When you've got white people saying things like, oh, racism isn't real, or reverse racism is the bigger crime, or minorities in America are totally fine, you guys just need to, like, damn, like, at some point, you got to chill out, and yeah, you have to listen to people and figure out what their problems are so that we can move forward in a positive...
This is the problem. When you get condescending, people say, fuck you, I don't want to listen. And that's why you're seeing this big pushback. I didn't start it. And
well, but
this
both
whole
sides are condescending. We can't pretend the condescension only comes from one side, right? Like, Trump is literally the most abrasive political figure.
It does come from one side. Trump is a reaction to the retarded identity politics of the last...
You're talking about reaction to identity politics.
Dog,
half the people that were tweeting at me in response to what you were saying to me were literal Nazis and white supremacists, like linking
Look, man, it's this guilt by association shit. Why don't you denounce all the communists in your movement? They killed 100 million people.
Wait,
what's wrong with communism?
communism?
Is that what you just said?
Wait, what does communism have to do with any of this?
Well, what do Nazis have to do with this?
The people, it's a political and race ideology. Communism is just an economic thing.
Oh, it's an economic thing. Okay, Nazis were a movement in 1930s Germany. They have absolutely nothing to do with any of this. Americans are the ones who beat the Nazis. So I don't know why we're bringing Nazis into anything.
Because the people that we're supporting you identify as neo-Nazis.
I don't care. Does someone replying to me mean that I endorse them? Have I ever tweeted anything of neo-Nazi ideology?
No, but I guess like the thing that bothers me is that at some point, if you find that you are in company with a ton of white supremacist, racist people, like at some point you got to wonder, like, fuck, what the fuck am I talking about? Like,
no, these are just slurs, white supremacist, racist. And by the way, this thing that I think I'm white. So fine, go ahead and take the whiteness away from me.
It is a little funny that you'd consider white supremacist like a slur. You know, like it's usually a reaction to you using slurs. And it's like, all right, white supremacist. Like, yeah, sometimes people just call people white supremacists and shit. I get it. But I mean, based on so far the trajectory of this conversation, I mean, you know.
I'm just an Uncle Tom Middle Eastern.
No, hold on, no. I'm not trying to take the whiteness thing away from you. I think it's a beautiful thing. This is where we are. At 2017, a half Iranian is talking to me and feels like they belong to America. That's a good thing, dude. That's a positive thing. Because like I said...
I don't think that JonTron's understanding, I guess I don't know if it would be called hypocrisy, but like the irony, I suppose is a better way to say. The irony of like somebody that comes from Iran saying that they're white. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But the point is that like you're not a traditional white person, so and yet you're advocating as if you were this traditional white individual, and it's just like ironic. That's what he's trying to say. That I used my smite, and now if I go for the drag, I'm not gonna have it. That's what he's trying to say. I fucked up.
150 years ago, people identified as their European counterparts. Like, you're not American, you're German, you're Polish, right? It's these things. You're Italian, you're British. Like, but now we see ourselves as American. There's a ton of different white people in the United States that all see themselves as fucking white people. A lot of people
clearly people in America. If there is one, let me put it this way: if there's one American in America who doesn't see themselves, and they're a citizen, who doesn't see themselves as strictly American, we have ourselves a problem, in my opinion. Because and sure, if you want to move towards fixing that, that's fine. That's a great goal. I don't think a pure society is possible. Like, I don't think that's possible. But in terms of a demographic majority, I don't know that a nation can exist without one. This truly multicultural, every single person is a different like thing or race or religion. I don't really know if that's sustainable long term in society.
Why not? What's so wrong about people being?
Well, have you seen the last 4 years, my friend? I feel like people like you, when they're talking about this, they just pretend they get you gaslight. You pretend that the last 4 to 8 years didn't fucking happen.
I'm not gaslighting.
You know what I want to say though? It was so interesting is that like we do, again, identity politics exists. I get it. Some like leftists are annoying. But what's so interesting is I feel like internet personalities don't humanize, or they don't look at the world through a realistic lens. Bro, this shit is very exclusive to like online bullshit. Like, yeah, it's happening in politics too. Most people in the real world are just like, this is fucking dumb on both sides. They're just like, this is just dumb noise. So I find it like incredible that we don't think like, bro, I know I have black friends. None of them like talk like this. None of them give a shit about identity politics. Like, it's a very online performative thing.
Side is the definition of gaslighting. Dude, you're telling me that there are riots all over Europe and riots all over Sweden. No, they're not. They're not. Do you think Sweden is falling apart right now under mass rioting and burning down of...
You ever heard of boiling the frog slowly? Doesn't notice.
I mean, people say the same about Trump's move towards an authoritarian fascist government. I mean, you can make the same argument about anything. Like I said, I mean, the facts back me up that we are in an unprecedented era of world peace right now. But for some reason, people think
about to change.
Why?
Because it's falling apart.
But it's not. You're the one gaslighting now. Do you see? Trump is the one gaslighting. This idea that crime is at a 45-year high, that ISIS represents a threat somehow to the Western world, these are gaslightings by fucking Trump. These things aren't true.
I will give you that perhaps it's a little bit on both sides there, but a little bit on both sides, yeah. I still maintain what I say is true. And, you know,
so, like, when I look at society in America today, 200 years ago, men and women would not have been seen as being able to do equal things. That would be a disgusting idea. 150 years ago, you know, Italians, Polish people, Irishmen wouldn't have been considered even white people, let alone Americans, right?
I don't know that is just a myth. That's not true. They were considered white. I don't know where this thing that Italians and Irish weren't considered white. That's ridiculous. You seen the Irish are like the whitest people around. The hell, that's just a fucking myth. So I'm going to take that from you.
Okay, here's I can't read the word. It's white N-word, okay? I can't read this because I'm going to trouble on stream, okay? This is what Irishmen were called. I mean, in the United States, I don't know if you think this.
Proof than a short Wikipedia article here.
I mean, what do you?
What's so funny is that JonTron in his like response video mentioned Irish people like as like an oppressed class in some capacity. Isn't that funny? And so I guess he agrees with that narrative now.
What? I mean, we're talking about an undisputed.
But they were still white. That's all I'm saying.
They literally had signs in the United States that said Irish need not apply. These were less than humans. These people were treated horribly. They were not seen as Americans or even white people. They were called reverse Negros.
Maybe they were a bunch of dicks, huh?
I don't think so, no.
I mean, okay.
So, 200 years ago, women weren't seen as being able to achieve the same thing as men were. 150 years ago, Irishmen and Italian weren't seen as being white people. 100 years ago, black people weren't seen. It seems like we're making...
Being Irish, or people not liking the Irish, or people not liking the Italians, doesn't make them not white. It just makes them not liked. Perhaps they had some traits that were undesirable. I hear the Italian mafia made the rounds. But
it's so funny that JonTron's just not getting the concept that across time, different groups were considered like non-white. And non-American, and there was a time where Irish weren't considered white, right? And he's not getting it because JonTron's like, no, they've always been white, but like, no, things have shifted. Like, people have been, you know, and that's one of the things that's so easy to identify as like white skin color, which is probably why it became easier for those people to be considered white nowadays. But he tries to make this argument that like, oh, we were always like a Eurocentric, this, that, but we really weren't. We were always very racist. That's something we could all galvanize around, but.
But look, that would have been a good argument to restrict Italian immigration then.
But we didn't. And look what happened. No, they've integrated into society. That's a good thing. Nobody in the United States of America, nobody in the U.S. sees an Italian.
Took him down.
Nobody in the U.S. looks at Italians and goes, oh, you're Italian. You're not a real American. Look at all of the integration we've achieved so far. Why would we stop at this point when we've come so much farther than we ever thought possible?
Because if it's not working, we should avert course.
How is it not working? What's not working?
It appears there is a lot of conflict. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last election, they pitted non-whites against whites, and they expected the non-whites to vote for Hillary, or you were some sort of race traitor. And I don't know if you want to ignore that.
Sure, but then also, okay, so like socially, like people are using identity politics, but then realistically speaking, like we use immigration as a way to subsidize, honestly, some of our really shitty policies. Like first and foremost, we use a lot of immigration from south of the border to subsidize and like do jobs that people in America don't want to do. People who identify as Americans feel that they're too good for, and they fill in the gaps in those. Like we would literally, I feel like, oh, we could have won that. Fuck, there's a lot of fucking CC here. You fat fucking lazy bitch. Oh my god, what a fucking loser.
That fact, that's fine, but that's why.
I feel like we had that. And then even when it comes to our doctors, my understanding is like 75% or 25% of our doctors, they get training outside of America. We have so many doctors from other countries, and we use those to subsidize like our shitty, really like a lot of our shitty. Sorry, give me a second. Our shitty school system that makes it very difficult to become a doctor, because it's like actually I believe like, it's just like very strenuous to become a doctor. There's some things that are generally not necessary, but like lack of education, this, that, we have like a really weird education disparity in America. We utilize immigration across the board. You know, some of them are just white immigrants, so I guess it's okay. Like,
well, I mean, it's kind of based on their platforms. You got somebody like Trump saying that if you have Mexican parents, you can't be a federal judge. I mean, that's a pretty racially
Did he say that?
charged.
I don't know if he said that. I don't recall Trump ever saying anything explicitly racist. I recall that he said that he wanted illegal immigrants from Mexico who committed crimes to go back.
He also said that a lot of the people that Mexico sends over here, they send rapists and murderers, and maybe some are good people. I mean,
was he wrong about the fact that we get a lot of crime from Mexico? Was he wrong about that?
For the most part, yeah. I don't think that the majority of illegal immigrants are murderers or rapists. There's no data to back that up. So yes, he was wrong. Some of white people are murderers and racists. Should we deport all white people?
Yes, but those are people that they're part of. If you want to call, they're part of the American family. We can't do anything about them. But why would we import crime? Why would we do that?
It's just like a weird thing to be like, yeah, but those are our murderer. It's like, come on, dude. Like, I can understand that we shouldn't have unregulated. It's fine to say that you don't want unregulated immigration. That makes totally perfect sense. But now you're saying like, but we don't want the murderers, and you're basically equating them all to murderers. And then you're turning around with like, what about our murderers? He's like, no, those ones are okay. Our murderers are all right. It's like, come on, like you're being very, you're being. That's why it makes it racist. Is because you're more focused on the demographic of people than anything else. Just be like, yeah, I think that we have an immigration problem. Maybe we're letting in too many asylum seekers, and they're not coming here for the correct reasons, right? Because you're supposed to seek asylum for some kind of a threat to your life, not economic asylum. And I can be empathetic to people trying to have a better life, but like we shouldn't have unregulated immigration. Nobody's gonna say that's a hot topic, and then I should have said that, and then I'm racist. But you're like, well, a lot of them are rapists and murderers. Like, I don't really think so. I think most of them are just trying to do their fucking best, man. This is very different things to say, you know?
It doesn't make sense.
We're not talking about importing crime. The fact that you have importing crime as synonymous with Mexicans coming to the United States is a little telling, don't you think?
It has nothing to do with Mexicans. If a bunch of Hungarians came in here committing crime, I would say the fucking same thing, man.
Okay, you're saying that it has nothing to do with them being Mexicans. Then why is it so important that whites remain the majority in the United States? What is it about being white that's so important?
Look, I'm actually not making the argument that whites should remain the majority in the United States. I'm simply arguing that it's clear that whites are not allowed to speak up against their demographic oblivion. I mean,
it's not oblivion. There is no oblivion. Nobody is walking around killing all the white people.
Says you.
I'm sorry. Wait,
They are. See, what's killing white people is that they're not only sleeping with other white people, and so they're being considered non-white. And the reason they're considered non-white, a lot of that is because of a history of racism that will call you like a mutt and like dirty if you're part fucking black. So that's how white people are literally dying because of white rhetoric, like white racist rhetoric from the past, where you're not white if you date a black person. It's the most fucking insane thing. You're not white if you date a black person. You're not white if you date a Hispanic person. That's why we have less white people. We act like it's some kind of fucking like destruction or like like targeting of fucking whatever. Yo, don't even fuck with me, dog. We're acting like, you saw that? How I went with the flash with my Q. I'm just so fucking smart, bro. But a lot of it actually has to do with like anti-black rhetoric is why we have less people who are considered white in America, and we don't think of it like that, but it's a big reason why, honestly.
I missed the stories where all of these white people are being killed in hordes by Mexicans and black people?
They're not being killed, man, but they're being displaced. I mean, if you
what do you mean by displaced?
You are the same guy who says that Europeans displaced the Native Americans. That's your argument. That's your go-to argument. Oh, you're not a Native American, then you can never be a true American. But apparently, when other people do it to white Americans, it's okay because fuck white people.
Wait,
it's obvious what you're saying.
No, my original point was that I think it's strange that so many people identify as American when your family typically immigrated from another country. I never spoke to whether or not...
Everybody's from fucking somewhere, man. It doesn't make these things not real. Like,
well, sure, but I kind of agree
with
what you're saying.
People immigrated onto the island at one point before there was anything there. I mean, what is your point?
You're nothing. That's good. You made my point for me. I agree that where you're from doesn't define who you are. That anybody can go to a country and be part of that country. So then why are we so worried about white displacement?
Do I think that JonTron's races are ignorant? So like that's a good question because there's a lot of people. I was thinking about this question because I knew it was going to come up, and I was trying to figure out because it's hard to express because this is like it's not a new concept, but it's hard to explain. I don't know if I know how to explain it well, and I hope I don't do myself a disservice. There are a lot of racist people in the United States, obviously, and that's not just white people, but there's a lot of racist people in the United States. And one of those things is like white people are forced more to check their racism, which is unique to white people, and I understand why because we've been like because I'm about to die and I'm gonna fucking kill myself. Oh, nay-nade. Okay, I was going off on a tangent. It was unnecessary. But I don't think a lot of them mean to be racist. There's active and passive you call racist. There are people with like particular biases that know that their biases are wrong and they work to not have them or utilize them. And then there's people who are totally comfortable like being like inwardly racist and then expressing that racism. I don't think that JonTron is necessarily the person that is like actually fuck you. That's actually like racist in that sense of active racism. I think that he has thoughts and that he doesn't know how to communicate them because he doesn't understand that they're like racist, but he also understands that he shouldn't treat people like in a particular way. I think that he's more ignorant than anything else. I guess you could juxtapose that with like Tucker Carlson, which is somebody that seems to expressively exude racist rhetoric and know what he's saying, or know how to like appeal to those types of people in the rhetoric that would be somebody I would consider more racist. Yo, what's up, bitch?
Because it's real.
Carlson?
Do you want me to send you a link? Would you here?
What does white displacement mean?
Here, have a look at this chart here. That's what it looks like. You can show that on the stream if you'd like to. They're going to be, I mean, at this rate, you know, the whites would be a minority by 2042.
Okay, but what I'm asking is, why does it matter if a certain skin color is a minority?
Because you and people of your ilk would freak out had the situation been flipped. Had the situation been whites colonizing a part of when the Chinese did.
Wait, we're not colonizing anything. These are people legally immigrating.
Okay,
legally
so
belonging...
why when the Chinese, were trying to colonize Tibet or whatever it was, trying to go into Tibet, why was that, a save Tibet situation?
It's interesting that he doesn't understand the difference between like being allowed into the country and colonizing a country. Those are one of them is allowed, the other isn't. Very, very. It's really the difference between like letting somebody come to your house versus somebody breaking into your house. That's why colonization is bad. It's not like it's really not a hard difference to comprehend, and I just don't think that he's getting it. What a dingus!
But I don't know anything. I don't know about the situation in Tibet and China. I'm talking about the United States of America.
Okay, well, I'm using a metaphor. What do you call it? Allegory, metaphor?
Analogy.
And I mean, sorry, geez, I'm dumb. I'm using an analogy to try to, give a parallel situation so you can see the hypocrisy.
Wait, what is the hypocrisy? Wait, I don't care about other countries' standards. I'm not concerned with them. There's no hypocrisy between saying Japan can be racist and America can't, because I'm American and I have my American beliefs and ideas. Japan has other beliefs and ideas. I understand that. I would never go to Japan and tell them to change the way their country works. It's their country.
Okay, let me ask you something. Do you consider the European colonization of Africa to be a bad thing?
Yeah, that's a very, very complicated...
It's only complicated because it's whites.
No, it's not. It's really complicated because in a lot of ways Africa's been exploited by different imperialist countries, and in other ways Africa has grown a lot in different economies because of their trade with these countries. Like, that's a really, really complicated question. Africa's still lagging behind a lot of the world for a lot of different reasons, but they have been catching up and making great progress over the past 20 years. Like, it has nothing to do with skin color or white people. I mean, you could look at it through that paradigm if you want, but that's a really complicated issue.
I'm just saying, if white people go to South Africa, they colonize there. It's the white people encroaching on the Africans' land, and they should give it back. But
we're not talking about colonizing or imperializing people. We're just talking about immigration in the United States.
What do you call a large number of people from one specific place coming in, setting up their own ethnic enclaves, and then waving their own flag inside of our nation?
What is setting up your own ethnic enclaves and waving your own flag? I'm pretty sure we have a lot of Mexicans that come to the United States that are living in the United States that wave American flags and are proud to be American. Like,
yes, of course there are some, but there are also large swaths of them who don't feel that way, who want to break parts of.
I just don't understand because, like, bro, like I don't really identify with my German roots too much, but like I live on Long Island. I know a lot of Italian people. These motherfuckers are fucking. They don't shut the fuck up about Italy, even the ones that aren't born here. They're annoying, and I'm on record saying that. All right, because I had one of those fucking Italians in my house last night because we're friends. But seriously, like, they have pride in their shit. Who cares? Who fucking cares? They're Italian American. They love fucking Italy. They don't shut the fuck up about it. They all think they're fucking Tony Soprano. I don't care. Whatever. You do you, bro. Who cares? They're still happy to be American, but they wave their fucking Italian flag. White people do the same shit. It's just like, it just really depends. And some different people do different things. Like, I don't want you, what do you want me to tell you? Usually, the people who have been here longer have less of an identity with their previous country, I guess you would call it. No, it wasn't Pud. It was Pud's brother. That's it. Not really a hot take.
America off back into Mexico. So what would you say to those?
Okay. So, just to put your argument on paper, you think that there are people that risk rape, murder, and theft, leaving and fleeing Mexico to come to the United States, whose ultimate goal is to secede part of the United States back to the place that they fled from?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
You think that there are people that risk rape, murder, and theft to try to get their families from Mexico to the United States so that ultimately they could get back to the United States just to secede part of it to Mexico. They want to break it off and go back to the land that they...
Man, I'm not going to speculate on why they did what. All I know is what they are doing. And
whoa, you just speculated, though. You said that they wanted to speculate. You said they wanted to come here and break off. You know, where are these movements of Mexicans trying to get, what, Texas to go back to Mexico?
when you have these illegals coming up and getting so bold to say, try deporting me, Trump, that's a sign of a problem. By the way, it's inarguable that the locations from where people have immigrated, it has changed. Up until, I believe it was 1965, it was all Europeans, and now most of it is from Mexico. And by the way, they're even going into, I believe, the African Americans areas and pushing them out too. So it's not just white Americans that are affected by this kind of thing.
I'm
so
not affected. I don't understand what you. This is what I'm trying to get back to the original question. What do you mean by affected? What's so bad about a certain type of people immigrating to a country? Like back to the original question. Why does it matter if white people become the minority in the United States? Why is that a big deal?
Man, come on. Come on, man. I mean, look, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. That's how people work. That's how all.
No, it's not. That's not true. Maybe that's how racists work. This is where the word comes from. Well, I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to get you to tell me because that's all I can go on right now. Because you're not giving me more. I'm asking you, why does it matter if white people are the minority in the United States? And you keep like kind of laughing and go like, well, is it because brown people are worse than white people?
No, of course it's not because brown people are worse. It's a matter of integration. If they immigrate, they need to integrate. But also, we don't need to take immigrants from incompatible places. It doesn't make any sense.
But that's the beautiful thing about America, dog. There is no incompatible place that people can't come
Oh
from.
my God, man. Okay, well, I mean, if that's.
I mean, we're the most diverse country on the planet, dude. Like, you can't argue with that. We're also arguably the most successful country on the planet, at least in terms of overall size of the economy, although we definitely have problems. We are definitely the most influential country on the planet.
America
I mean,
has no
we are the
problems.
most
Fuck you.
diverse country on the planet. Like, these are inarguable. Why are you laughing? Like, oh, well, are we really? Like, no, it's you're acting like we're like 99% majority whites, and now we got like a little bit bogging us down. Like, that's absolutely not true. Like,
The country was something like 92% white in 1950. It's changed. Now it's about 60% non-Hispanic white, I believe. These are epic demographic changes, unlike what I don't know if it's ever been seen in history, maybe in some invasion in the 1500s. But look, these people see themselves, I'm assuming, as Mexican. I don't know that they come here and the soil magically turns them into Thomas Jefferson's direct descendant. So why is it that white people, especially white Americans, resisting their own displacement is racist?
because you're talking about displacement. I'm trying to
Bro, I fucking tapped that R way earlier and it went off just then. I'm getting some kind of input lag here. That was fucked up. Okay,
figure out what the displacement is. Nobody is killing white people. Nobody is moving white people out.
It's a soft displacement, dude. And when they become the majority, they will vote in their own interests. They won't vote in white Americans' interests. So
What is a
people
white
have
American?
a legitimate.
Wait, what is a white American interest? Can you give me an example of like white American legislation or white American?
My friend, there is a clear divide in the way that people think. White people tend towards the libertarian side of things, and at least the first generation Mexicans vote heavily in
How do
terms of
white
government
people?
handouts.
If that was true, then why are red states the one that leech all of the federal money? Then, if red people believe
I don't know that
Republicans,
that's true.
It is true. It's
I don't know
absolutely
if that
true.
fact. Well, if that fact is true, I need to look into it. I don't know about that.
You know, it's interesting because you could look at these from different like capacities. You know who really leeches welfare? Corporations. Fuck capitalism, am I right? I'm a capitalist, but also fuck corporations. Anyway, it's interesting. We have these things called donor states, right? And the 9 of the 10 donor states. There are 10 states, and this is the last time I looked. There might actually be less now because, you know, our economy's fucked. 9 out of the 10 donor states, these are the states that give more money in taxes to the federal government than they receive back, are blue states. Up in the tops are like New York, Connecticut, shit like that, right? I don't know this guy. And I believe that's what he's referring to, which is a real thing. Their blue states are usually the most like that generally would be generous with their tax dollars, giving more. And I'm not against it. I mean, it is what it is. You know, you have a bigger state that makes more money because a lot of times, like New York makes a lot of money. Part of it because it's just like a fucking center for trade. Right? Okay, makes perfect sense that New York is that. So we should give up a little bit more of our money to the federal government than we get back. Right? Funny enough, Trump cut those those. We used to have pretty decent property tax exemptions, not full exemptions. Okay, so there's a time I think that it was like 80%. Connecticut was giving 80. They were only getting back 80 cents on the dollar that they gave to the federal government before Trump decided to get rid of their property tax reductions, which made it more. So he basically, Trump did effectively charge more blue states more money to subsidize red states more. It's kind of a funny thing. I just wanted to bring that up there. And really, the idea that white people vote more libertarian, I'm assuming he's making this argument that they vote more conservatively. I mean, I would say more than that. It's really just more middle class people. I don't think it has anything to make. Maybe it's disproportionately white because white people are more middle class than like Hispanic people because of the way that everything splits up. But I would argue that if you had more middle class Hispanic people, they wouldn't have like this. I don't think that there's a Hispanic mentality. I think it's just more of like a class mentality. When you have more money, when you're in a group like middle class, especially, and you make enough money to survive, but your taxes are kind of fucking you. Like, yeah, of course you want more of your tax money to be in your pocket. That's not really a white perspective. That's just a normal perspective of of a middle class American, especially with getting kind of like this gets into this whole complicated thing. Middle class Americans who are generally getting taxed more to help poorer people when we should be doing it to the rich people. But a lot of times we have a lot of policies that are implemented that pit poor and middle class people against each other, which I think is one of the ways that there's like kind of like welfare is one of those things where it's like a lot of times like we got to raise taxes for welfare or lower taxes for welfare, and it's really just pitting poor. Lower class and middle class people against each other, and that's like this gets into a whole fucking other conversation. But I think you understand what I'm trying to say. I don't want to get into this whole fucking thing because you get what I'm saying.
Do you think that like a country like, I'm sorry, do you think that a state like California is taking more federal aid than it's giving back in taxes? Red states absolutely leech money off of the federal budget, and blue states are typically the ones that contribute to it. And even within red states, blue cities are typically the ones contributing the vast majority of the budget and the money compared to the red rural areas. So I don't understand.
What state is it that leeches? Are you talking about southern states or something like this?
Sure. Yeah, the red states are really the Alabama is the Louisiana is the.
I mean, these states have high non-white populations that I believe. I mean, I don't want to get into. I don't want to.
well, look at what you're saying. You're saying these states have high non-white populations.
Yeah,
then why do they vote Republican? I thought you said
they-
these people have voted Democrat.
They do.
Okay, so they've got enough non-white people to vote, but they vote Republican.
I believe those states have a lot on welfare, but I don't know this for sure, so I don't want to. I don't really know about this one. I will defer this one to you. I don't know.
Okay, but then you said earlier that most of the Republicans were libertarians or whatever. I don't know. It just seemed like a
No. We see a different voting pattern. At least look. Even if it doesn't have to do with race, even if it doesn't have to do with national origin, even if it didn't have to do with these things, we see a discrepancy in the voting patterns between the different groups in America. So when you see that it becomes stacked against the majority population who is discouraged from voting in their own interest.
Wait, what does that mean? I'm trying to figure out what does it mean. What does it mean to vote against your own interests? What are white interests that get voted against?
I don't know what reality you're living in, man. I mean, when the news is telling you that a vote for Donald Trump is a racist vote, okay, and Donald Trump, all that he's saying is perhaps maybe we should keep America the way it was.
So first, that's because it's an incredibly stupid statement to make.
So then, like from what JonTron said, white interests are keeping the country white. Like this is why it's fucking dumb and racist. Like it's not. What is a white interest? White people being the majority. Okay, well it's like a racist thing.
Okay, it says you.
Well, okay, when you say make America great again, what time period are you referring to that you would want to return America to?
Look, I don't think that's
specifically the prehistoric time when we had dinosaurs. It'd be fucking cool.
This is a really silly question. I mean,
well, wait, you just said he wants to make America great again. He wants to go back to keeping America great. What time period are you talking about?
I said preserve. I didn't say go back.
Wait, preserve as it is now? Because I thought you said there weren't enough white people now. Or do you mean like just exactly right now?
You said that. I didn't say that.
You said that whites were becoming a minority. You said that it wasn't
good. They are becoming a minority. So listen, if the people can't integrate in and feel as if they are one people and truly, by the way, now this whole melting pot thing, that would require that they become part of the greater whole and don't form enclaves, because then you get balkanization. You don't get this utopian melting pot. So.
Yeah, but in the United States, it seems like we've done a pretty good job of melting a lot of different cultures together, no?
It could have been worse, but it's not perfect.
I mean, I can go down the street and I can eat 50 different million types of food. I can turn on my radio and hear music from 50 million different types of culture. I can turn on the TV and see 50 million different things. I'm sure that if I walk around my house, I've got things built in Mexico, built in China. You're talking to me on a computer, so you've got innovation from California that has a lot of East Asian workers in the tech field working there that have shipped their parts over from China, who probably drive to work on cars built from parts that are shipped in from Mexico. Like, I mean, what do you mean it doesn't work? Like, I don't. What are you seeing? I'm trying to understand your worldview. Like, what are you watching that's showing that like America is falling apart and all these people are killing themselves and murdering white people and everything is going to shit? Like, what are you seeing that shows you this?
My friend, I don't know that you. I feel like these are words you're putting in my mouth. I never.
Well, no, I'm trying to understand. Where is it
absolute? There is an absolute disproportionate amount of crime committed to whites by non-whites. That's there's no arguing that. That's just FBI statistics. So in that sense, you could say, well, why shouldn't the white people be able to address this? But they're not allowed to because they're called racist.
If you wanted to fix crime in the United States, the best way to do it would be to deport all of the poor people, because poor whites commit a lot of crime too, disproportionately compared to wealthier whites.
That's just not true. But okay,
wait, hold on. It is true. Let's get rid of all poor people. Let's do it. Let's create a whole country that's just for poor people. Like we'll call it like shitty America, and then we'll have the good America for all like the rich people, like people like affluent Twitch streamers, of course, like myself. They don't make that much money. And say get rid of poor people. I don't want them around. Fuck those poor people. You know what I'm saying? Just don't be poor. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm just kidding. It's all a joke. I know people are gonna take that seriously.
Wait. You don't think that?
Well, yeah. Well, yes. In relative to wealthy whites. Yes.
Sure.
You're correct.
Okay. So, do you think that poor blacks probably commit more crime relative to wealthier black people?
They do. Wealthy blacks also commit more crime than poor whites. That's a fact.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Look it up. Give me a sec. I gotta get water.
I looked into this and it was like weird.
Does anybody have a source for that? Fuck. When people make extreme claims, I don't even know how to. Fuck.
It's true, man.
I've never heard that in my life, dude. I've never seen that ever posted. I'll have to look for it later. I see an article written that says poor white kids are less likely to go to prison than rich black kids, but I'm pretty sure
That's just some conjecture.
I mean, what you just said was conjecture.
That implies that the court system is somehow racist.
The court system disproportionately, even when controlling for socioeconomic factors, sentences black people typically for harsher sentences compared to white people, even when you control for the crimes. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
You're saying, I mean, this is just ridiculous. That they're going to sentence.
I mean, like, there's a lot of Jesus Christ with these dodges. There's a lot of like, this is one of those things. It's like it is true. Like there is this there's so much that goes into this when it comes to it. A lot of it is like this implicit bias in the way that we perceive different people. There was a study done where people of all races do this, where white people or people of the same race perceive other people of the same race as, for lack of a better term, more human than people of a different race that are unfamiliar to them. So this goes across as black with white people too. But so we could use that as an example. So let's say it's a black person will perceive a white person as less human than if they don't know them than an unfamiliar black person, right? Which I get it. It makes sense. We all have this like implicit bias designed into us, and that's totally fine as long as we work to understand that it's wrong to do that. So I don't think it's a hot take to say like, okay, if we apply this very rational, understandable logic, you have more white people being represented as lawyers and judges and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which means that you would imagine that judges would more harshly sentence black people based on that. Right? Do I think it's active racism? I don't necessarily do. I think that it's like an implicit bias in the system. That's something that we need to talk about because there are people with biases, even if they wouldn't be considered racist, they're still going to look and say like, okay, this person initially unfamiliar. That's how things work. Like a judge sees a person, okay, unfamiliar culture. Tie that in also with like the general lower socioeconomic standing of black people, and you have like a recipe for fucking disaster. Right? And so, like, yeah, black people are more harshly sentenced because of that. There's also the fact of, again, they're generally poorer, and that's due to a history of systemic racism, gets into a whole bunch of things. There's a culmination of factors when it comes to a lot of things, right? So I don't doubt that a wealthier black person would be sentenced more harshly than a poor white person. Are there more is there more to it? Possibly. I don't really know. I can't really find a definitive, decent article about it. But I think that the generalized claim, because the implications of what JonTron's trying to say is that even rich black people suck, I guess is what he's trying to say. But we'd have to look into a lot of different like reasons, like, well, what type of jobs do affluent black people work versus affluent white people, et cetera, et cetera. I don't really know. There's a lot of factors in there. I'd like to investigate it more. I haven't been able to find anything. Like I heard him say that, so I looked into it and I couldn't find anything that I found to be particularly enlightening or intelligent. But still, like, it's just an ignorant thing to say.
I don't subscribe to that.
I mean,
that's the whole court system is biased, is racist. That's the same thing. So let me ask you this. So on one end you're saying race doesn't matter. On the other end you're saying race does matter. So which is it? People like you can never say, because you just want.
So mad.
You just want to.
Who should I play? Fuck it.
Wait, hold on. I'm saying that it would be nice if race didn't matter. Has been essentially my entire argument.
Okay, but it would be nice if a lot of things were.
Okay, you're the one making the argument.
Nice if I had a fucking $1 billion.
You're the one making the argument that race is literally paramount. That it is the most important thing.
It is not the most important thing. But why is it so bad for? You're acting like white people would just want to, purge the lands or something. It's not true. Just why?
No, I'm not talking about. I'm just back to my question that I keep trying to get an answer. I just don't understand why it's so bad if white people become a minority. Why is that such a horrible thing?
Nobody wants to become a minority in their own country, man.
Why? Why does it matter? I don't consider myself a minority because I'm an American, and everyone around me is an American. Why does it matter if they're white or brown or black?
Well, that's not. I don't think that's how. I don't know how to answer this.
Like, it blows my mind.
Why is it bad? Why is it bad on the flip side? Why is it bad if they remain a majority? Like, why?
Because you're talking about excluding potential labor.
Well, that's the thing. It's not like, who cares if it is or isn't the majority? I think that's the argument. Like, I don't really care if there's more black people, white people, whatever. Who gives a shit? The issue is like being upset about it, right? Like, if we just maintained the majority, okay. Like, but if we didn't, okay. So it's that's where it comes from. It's not like there's an advocation for the reduction of white people versus the advocation for the increase of white people. It's just the advocation for letting immigration happen, and who cares if there's less white people versus like this desperation to maintain a white population.
Labor, potential talent. When you talk about keeping whites the majority, the only way that you're doing that is by what? Barring immigration from people that are brown? That's the only way you would do it, right?
No, look.
Or how else would you do it then?
I mean, so basically, you're saying that it sounds like you think the end game is that whites should become a minority.
No, I think that the end game is let people do what the fuck they want. We keep letting people immigrate. I mean,
propaganda supremacy, yes.
Whatever.
So
whatever
why
happens.
you are constantly projecting this ideology of nonstop immigration from, say, the third world? What if Americans of any color, by the way, not just white? I should specify, it's not just white people that feel this way. You think a Mexican who comes from Mexico probably wants to move to America, not move back to Mexico. You understand?
Sure.
So it's in literally everyone's best interest.
This kind of like negates the whole narrative from before, though. He was talking about how like, oh, Mexican people are coming over here waving their flag and acting un-American. But now all of a sudden it's like, but Mexican people don't want Mexico to be that either. But Destiny made that point of like, hey, do you think that people are coming over here to try to make America like their country? No, because like they're usually, a lot of people, especially asylum seekers, are trying to escape the horrors of their country. It's fucking right. So JonTron's really all over the place. This is the problem, right? And this is when you can identify it. And it's that JonTron has a particular belief, and so he's looking for evidence that will support that belief, rather than looking at evidence and creating like a belief out of the evidence, if that makes sense. He has a particular narrative that he's trying to push, and it's very rhetorical. It's very emotion based, and there's really not a lot of a whole lot of factual foundation to it.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Wait, I don't understand that the sequitur. What do you mean? A person from Mexico wants to?
What I'm saying is, let's just say that we admit a Mexican immigrant to the country. Now, does that Mexican immigrant? He's probably leaving Mexico because he wants to move to America.
This is literally a point Destiny made like fucking 10 minutes ago, in this argument.
Which is, in his eyes, probably a better country. Let's admit. But if swaths of illegal immigrants pour across the border, we can't do anything about it under pain of being called racists. When that Mexican immigrant steps into America and sees that nothing's changed because the Mexicans have brought their Mexican culture with them, he says, "What the heck? What did I spend 3 years trying to?" That's
the thing. Like Mexican culture. That's kind of like a subtly racist thing he said. Mexican culture isn't defined by any type of governmental abuse in Mexico or it has nothing to do with it. That's just a bad government. That's it. And a poor government as well, because we don't exactly have the greatest government. But he's trying to make it seem like, well, we don't want Mexican culture here. Mexicans are fine with Mexican culture. They just don't like being oppressed. They don't like fucking gangs running their country. That's cool. So you would have to think that gangs running Mexico, or having like an influence, or like a corrupt government, we'll say, right? Maybe I'm speaking out of ignorance, but that a corrupt government is somehow integral to Mexican culture. It's not. It has nothing to do with it. That's just like a governmental system issue.
You get, my citizenship for this. Or what, I don't know how it works.
Wait, so is the argument that Mexicans immigrating to the United States are going to turn it into Mexico?
Bro, Destiny, you gotta turn their fucking alerts off.
If they were happy with Mexico, why would they come to the United States?
Because the better handouts? A lot of them are on welfare, you understand.
Have you ever in your entire life drove through a neighborhood where there are construction crews working, or where you see people outside working? If you were to talk to anybody in manual labor, you would never hear the argument passed around that Mexicans are lazy and on welfare. They do some of the tough.
Bro, I'm like really on. I know it's an anecdotal thing, but for fucking real, and I live, like I said, I live in like an area that's like it's predominantly white. It's like 60% white, and then everything else is non-white. Like I don't live in like a white. I would say I don't live in the generally. Oh, dude, you're fucking cuckold, bro. Anyway. I wouldn't say I live in like your very traditional white area, bro. Hispanic people are the fucking hardest. It's not even. Oh, bro, get the fuck over here, you bitch. It's not even Oh, bitch. It's not even Mexican people. It's like every Hispanic person. Every fucking Hispanic person is like that, dude. Are you kidding me? No rot. Oh, I'm so fucked. Oh my god. Every Hispanic person has been harder working than like any white person that I've ever worked with before. I don't know what to tell you. That's usually kind of how it breaks down. At least that's my anecdotal experience. So.
Toughest jobs available in this country.
Yeah, dude, you're just virtue signaling. Man, I get
How
it.
am I virtue signaling? What are you talking about?
Not all Mexicans are going to go on welfare. I understand that, but a lot of them are going to commit crimes. This El Salvadorians are going to create the MS-13 gangs. What about these guys? Huh? You just want to let these guys walk over the border?
Sure, and white people can do it.
Salvadorians aren't Mexican. I think that's I think that's something that was important to understand. If you talk, like, it's actually interesting because there's a lot of like different groups, I guess, different Hispanic groups that don't really like each other. Like if you talk to Hispanic people, a lot of Hispanic people, for instance, don't really like Puerto Rican people. They feel that they're lazy or something. They feel that like because they're American, they are entitled. I don't really know. I have never had an experience with any of this. There's issues between, I believe, Ecuador and Salvador. They don't particularly care for each other. Like there's a lot of like, they're not all the same group of people. which is kind of what he's trying to make this comparison to, which I think is racist. Like, I understand, like, I would group Hispanic people together. I generally can't tell, like, the difference between someone from fucking Peru versus somebody from fucking Ecuador. But, like, it's to say they're all the same, and to basically say they're all the same is fucking insane.
But too, that's why you have law enforcement. That's why you
they sure do, but their crime rates appear to be lower, and I don't know.
But that's not true. Immigration isn't even a predictor of crime in the United States. Things like level of education, whether or not you're in a single-parent household, your socioeconomic position, these are all much greater indicators of crime than whether or not you're an immigrant. Like, why not work on these things rather than say, well, no immigration because some of them are criminals? Like, that just seems silly. Why would you hurt your entire country doing that?
What I'm saying is,
I mean, America is.
Okay, your argument is, by the way, a lot of these people come to make money, send it back, and then go back. That's just true. So they have no long-term investment in this country, even though, apparently we like to think of ourselves as the all-amazing first world United.
Do they go back? I know people come from other countries and then they send money back, but do they go back? I feel like they don't go back, though. I feel like they have family in other countries. They come to America because there's a lot of opportunity here, and they send money back to their family. But do they go back? I feel like that's just incorrect.
States, but a lot of them do have the interest just to come here for what money they can make or get and then take it back. But that aside,
that's capitalism, and I'm totally for it. I exist to live, and I use capitalism to make money. Like, that's not a fucking Hispanic thing. That's just the way the life works. Except instead of sending it back home, or sending it to like a fucking whatever, you send it back home. Whatever, do you, bro? I don't give a shit.
What was I gonna say? Shit. What was the last thing you said?
I don't understand if you just want to like block off all Mexicans from coming to the United States, or
no. What I'm saying is the argument here is that we need an influx of immigrants.
So somebody in the chat says, I grew up in Texas. A lot of the Mexicans who came here didn't assimilate. They flew Mexican flags, refused to learn English. Most of the older generation work hard and send money to their families, but there are some younger people who join gangs in life. Okay, I get that. It generally takes a while, though, for you to be able to like assimilate. Like, you can't expect like a 40-year-old to directly assimilate. It takes a while. I mean, that's all I can really say. It takes a few generations to like really assimilate a particular group of people. Come here, bitch.
Because if we don't, the white they always say this, the white Americans, they do the jobs the white Americans don't want to do. That's not true. They just get pushed out because they flood the job market and they're willing to work for less.
Well, they get pushed out because of greedy company owners wanting to pay them less because they don't have to pay somebody the same livable wage. It's interesting that we put all this on like Hispanic people, but like who's the one that's the white business underpaying Hispanic people and not paying them on the books, and you're going to criticize Hispanic people for that? Don't you think that maybe it's the fault, like if partially the fault of the fucking business owner that wants to like pay cheap labor off the books? Why isn't that like a factor to you? It's just so fucking weird.
Because it's a higher standard compared to where they came from, and they lower the.
Okay, hold on. Do you consider yourself a libertarian? Do you believe in the free market and all of that?
I wouldn't consider myself a libertarian, but I think some of their ideas are good.
Like which ideas? Do you think that like free market and all of that is a good thing?
Of course, but I don't think all people are interested in the free market.
Okay, so then why are you so opposed to expanding the pool of the supply of labor to companies in the United States? I don't understand. You're talking about bringing in workers to the United States to help grow the overall economy, right? Well, I don't understand how this is a bad thing. Like from an economic point of view, is that the argument you're making?
I'm saying that when you bring in a bunch of workers who are willing to work for less, you're going to lower the standards of the living standards of the entire country. And this argument
that's not how living standards work. If you bring in people that are willing to work for less, okay, that means that the supply of the cost that goes into making the product is dropped as well, the cost of goods or whatever. So you can also sell products for cheaper as well. That's why we get cheap shit from China and Mexico and whatnot. If you brought in a bunch of cheap immigrant labor to create some product, then the cost of that product will get cheaper. No, doesn't that help increase the standards of living as well?
Yeah, you can sell out your society for a quick buck if that's what you're saying. Yeah, no, but there's
it's not. So if you want to buy an iPhone for $3,000.
Look, I don't.
I mean, yes, I think that we should. It wouldn't cost $3,000. My understanding, I think I looked into something, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe the cost of an iPhone would go up like 30% if they paid their workers a livable wage. I would be fine with paying 30% more in an iPhone for workers to get a livable wage. I'm okay with that. In fact, I wish somebody would invest in like a magical, like we'll call it an H phone or something. That's just a phone that pays its workers better. Same quality as an iPhone, just fucking more expensive. And I would be 100% fine with spending my extra money onto that phone. I don't give a shit. I feel like they should do that. If there was I really do. I wish a company would do that. I wish a company would be like, hey, listen, we want to pay like workers better. We're going to create like a phone or some kind of technology where we pay our workers better. And it costs more. But you get people that don't get oppressed. This guy's going to shove the lane when I'm trying to get him to push back.
I don't think mass consumerism is the answer to our problems. It's obviously...
So you think lowering the standard of living for everybody is the answer to our problems? We should make everything more expensive again?
No, I don't think it's not that. It's just that I think that there is something to be said for preserving a culture, giving a nation a continuity. These are legitimate.
Yeah, we have that. We're American. That's our continuity. That's our culture. It has nothing to do with being majority white.
You can say that, but these days, the Confederate flag has been banned. They're burning American flags in the street.
The Confederate flag. I don't think they banned the Confederate flag, but also what does the Confederate flag represent? It doesn't represent America. The Confederate flag is quite literally. The Confederate flag is quite literally a fucking traitor's flag. Like, honestly, let's. Oh, dude, I'm gonna get fucking nay-nayed. Dude, come on. This fucking team is gay. Sorry. The Confederate flag is quite literally an un-American flag. That is the point of that flag.
I don't know. It's a changing nation, and I do think that immigration policies that haven't been the smartest are partly to blame for that.
I guess I just don't understand how you think that being white is such an important part of being an American when you're.
I don't. I'm not even fully fucking white.
Then why are you so worried about whites not being a minority in the United States or whatever?
It's a principle. Why is it bad that they remain a majority then?
Because I've already said why. Because you're talking about restricting immigration from a ton of different areas in order to.
I know. Why do we have to take immigration from all these areas?
Because it helps grow the size of the economy and it brings talent in from other areas to continue to benefit the entire country.
It benefits the global elites. That's the only people it benefits.
Dude, you make millions of dollars making YouTube videos. You don't count as a global elite. What are you talking? Are you like the working man now? The average middle lower class citizen has benefited more from globalization than any other person. Poor people have cell phones with amazing technology in them because they're manufactured in China. Everybody in the United States can afford a car because we get cheap manufacturing from Mexico. What do you mean the global elites are causing immigration? That's your defense?
No, I'm just saying I don't see how this. By the way, look, we're arguing in gigantic generalizations. I understand that I'm putting.
We can argue specifics about anything if you want. I mean, I know all the specifics.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Is of course, there's going to be some real standout immigrants from these places. I'm just talking about the principle of not being displaced.
But you still haven't explained to me the principle. Why is it so bad that white people become the minority? I don't understand the principle. Why is it so bad?
Listen. This is just not how things work in reality.
What does that mean?
What it means is that people are tribal. If you look at Yugoslavia, that's a nation of all white people, and it balkanized and it broke up in a horrific war of sorts into Croatia.
I'm not talking about the Balkans. I'm talking about the United States of America. Go to Las Vegas. Go to any place with a ton of people, a big city. You'll find people of different races, of different religions, working together, coexisting together perfectly peacefully. You're acting like this never happens, and it's inevitable that some massive civil war will always break out. It seems like the only way it would happen is if everybody believed what you believed, and that you have to keep majority white status, otherwise shit is gonna go to hell. I don't understand.
Listen. Even though the mantra has. I mean, you're just arguing based off the old paradigm, which is that if
I'm arguing based on historical data.
I don't think you're arguing off data, because if you're arguing off data, you wouldn't be saying things you're saying.
Wait, what have I said that you think is wrong? Factually.
I mean, who in Europe is causing riots
I'm
currently?
not talking about Europe. I'm talking about the United States.
It all is interconnected, dude, because Europeans are the ones who founded this country, and they came from Europe, and Europe is having similar problems, so when you look at the parallels, you can understand. I don't even know what you mean by historical data. There's never been anything like this.
I'm just curious what I've said that you think is factually incorrect.
You're just deflecting.
I haven't deflected anything. You're the one that's hopping from topic to topic.
Every time I bring up Europe, you say I'm not talking about Europe. But
because the things that you're saying about Europe are really misinformed, and I don't want to jump into a massive discussion on individual. You can't even group these countries together. The problems that Germany is facing is going to be much different than the problems Sweden is facing. The problems in Sweden are going to be way different than the problems in the United Kingdom, who's part of the EU, who had different agreements than these other countries part of it.
It's interesting. You're right. They would be facing different problems, it would seem, but they're all facing a very similar problem, which leads us to believe maybe there's a pattern here. That's what I'm saying.
What's the pattern?
The pattern is that when you have mass immigration from countries that don't value liberalism and don't value equality between the sexes in the same way that Western countries do, for whatever reason, they will affect the overall culture, and that's what's happening right now in the West. And how many terrorist attacks are there?
If that was happening in the West, then why are we at it? Why do we have more rights for different types of minority groups than have ever existed in all of human history across the West?
You just proved my point. Because the Western countries have incredibly liberal values and do not value.
And they've held on to those liberal values even though all these brown people are moving in. Even though
who do you think is going to uphold those values?
The people that immigrate here, that are raised here, that believe in the same values that we do. Do you think that every Mexican in the United States? It seems so, because they're not all vote. I don't see Mexicans outside protesting abortions. That seems to be a white Christian thing. I don't see Mexicans outside, fucking protesting against gay rights. That seems to be a white Christian thing. Where are all of these Mexican groups?
I will say though, let's be honest here. A lot of the Hispanic people. Oh my God, are you fucking with my asshole right now? What the fuck? This kid's up my dick. Anyway, I'm just going to be honest about here. Most of the Hispanic people I mentioned, not a particular fan of gay people, all right? Maybe that's anecdotal. I'm just being fucking honest with you, though, okay? So that maybe they don't protest, but... I'm just being honest, bro. Listen, dude, I remember one person, and I have a lot of Hispanic friends, and they were telling me that I was like, do you think gay marriage should be legalized? And he goes, I said, I was asking him, I was talking about it. I was like, what do you think about gay marriage? And he's like, in my country, we don't give a fuck. I was like, we don't really like it. And I was like, but it's legal, so it's okay, right? And he was like, just because I make a law that says that a donkey can fly doesn't mean a donkey can fly. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's funny, though. What I find really interesting is a lot of people from, like, South and Central America would have what you consider more traditional. They'd have, like, ideas that are really do more aligned with what a conservative in the United States would consider, like, American. Like, they're, like, they're pretty religious. Like, in these Hispanic countries, they're pretty religious. They don't like gay people. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty on par. So I'm surprised. Honestly, it's so weird to me to say that they don't have similar values, but they have very similar values. I think people, like Hispanic people, have very similar values to white people, or so your typical conservative American idea of what America should be or whatever.
Protesting against civil rights and whatnot. I don't see this happening.
Now, there are a small minority of Christians who might do that, but we're talking. And
if you talk about anti-abortion rights in the United States, do you think it is a minority of Christians? Where do you think the majority of these people come from?
Muslims, for instance.
You think that Muslims are the main opposition to pro-choice women's rights or whatever in the United States?
No, not in the United States, because there aren't that many of them here, but there are a ton in Europe, which is the crisis that they're facing now.
Well, you would say, like, religious people are generally, like, pro-life, you know, or people that are, like, identify very heavily as religious.
And these
I'm not talking about Europe. I'm talking about.
But in America, it's usually, like, white religious people. I don't know. I guess they just have too much time on their hands to be able to go out and protest or something. I guess something. I don't fucking know.
The United States.
Okay,
Even
but Europe and the United States are interconnected in the same thing.
But they're not. They're very, very, very different places. They're very different problems. Extremely different. Yes.
Oh wow, very different.
You know that in Europe. You know that if you go to Europe, there's no such thing as white people, right? You know nobody says that, right?
I understand that Europeans see each
other
other as different groups of Europeans, but at the end of the day, they understand each other as Europeans, and they
you
know
think that, like, even people who live in the United Kingdom don't all see themselves as being like.
I'm aware that Europeans see each other differently, and it's an American thing to brand all Europeans white. I understand that, but that just proves the tribalism thing. It's real.
But it's not. It's obviously not, because if you go to the United States, all the white people do see themselves as similar. So obviously the tribalism is they've gotten over that part there.
First of all.
Also, no European at the end of the day. Do you ever see yourself as a North American? Do you think Americans ever at the end of the day like, I feel like a North American at the end of the day? Like, I'm the same as a Canadian and a Mexican.
That's actually a really good point. Like, like, it's like, oh, it's Europeans that founded this country, but it's like, well, that's actually a very interesting point I never thought about, because then by that logic, if you're saying, like, oh, you know, if you're going with the European angle, well, why not North American? Like, you're you're galvanizing around being European, but why not galvanize about being North American in some capacity? It's an interesting point.
I do believe that we are different from Mexico, but very similar to Canada, and everybody. And
because we're whiter.
No, because our countries derived from the same culture and had the same similar founding stock, at least. But I will say, you know, that's a big reason why all these. By the way, Europe and America, it's not different. Even though you say it's different, it's not.
What do you think is similar? It's totally different. We're incomparable places, dude. The United States is a massive country that has a massive border to the south of an unstable country. It's way different than, say, the United Kingdom, right? Who wasn't even having serious immigration issues, whose entire economy in place in the EU makes them a very special country, which is much different than the country of Germany, which has had a massive budget surplus year after year after year, even after taking in fucking 1 million fucking refugees, which is massively different than any of the Nordic countries, than Sweden, Finland, Norway. All of these places are all very different. It's a very, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's a very American thing to say all of these European countries are the same problem. That's so not true. The issues that white people face in fucking Northern Ireland is going to be way different than the difference between Southern and Northern Italians. All of these problems are massively different. You can't group all of Europe's problems in together and say they're the same thing as all of America.
They're different, but when you compare cyan and deep blue next to red, the bluish colors tend to look a little bit more similar, don't they? So
I know that this isn't about the game, but this guy stole the fucking red. That's so funny. Awesome.
The point is that they're all facing similar problems, coming from a similar part of the world. What does that tell you?
I don't think they're facing similar. This is why I didn't want to.
Then you're not informed.
I mean,
and the people in America want to stop that from happening. Now, Hillary Clinton wanted to speed up the refugees coming here, and of course that sounds good to people to say. Of course, you know, who doesn't want to take refugees? It's a great humanitarian thing to do, but at what cost? You know,
at what cost, dude? How many refugees have committed crimes in the United States? Do you know how many?
Well, we don't have the same migrant crisis as they do in Europe because
because we're completely different countries with completely different problems. Do you know how many refugees have committed crimes in the United States?
Ay, you are impossible, man. Dude,
because I know the data. Because two people,
no, you don't.
Yes, I do. Because 2 refugees in the United States were arrested for potentially funneling money to people in Iraq out of the 800,000 that have brought in. I know the numbers, dude. That's why it's frustrating to argue with somebody that wants to speak in generalities. Like, because you have this very strange, bizarre worldview that everything is falling apart, that everybody experiences the same problems, when that's completely not true. That's the narrative being sold to you.
That's Gen Z, am I right, guys? Everything's falling apart. Very depressed. Hashtag Suicide Boys trending on TikTok song.
By people like Breitbart, by people like the Spencer dude, by people like, but like, I don't understand. But so I'm trying to get a feel of your worldview, but you can't give me like any specific examples or facts or figures. So like, it's really hard to.
I am giving you an example. I've given you example after example.
What examples?
White countries that are experiencing. It is basically in white countries, historically white countries, it's seen as a moral imperative that whites don't resist their own displacement. If they resist it, they're racist. That is what I'm talking about. You can see this in every white country on planet Earth.
Okay, I don't understand. But again, going back to the central question, you can't tell me what's so bad about white.
Well, it's considered racist in any country. We're just like a leading country. White countries just tend to be more like we have more money and stuff, and we do more imperialism and fun stuff like that. So we have more money and resources. So, and we hold ourselves to higher standards, right? Like I would generally say that. Like that's the reason why we're supposed to be more socially accepting, because we're supposed to hold ourselves to the same. Yo, you're a dumb fuck. You're so dumb.
People becoming the minority. You still haven't answered that question.
Oh, you fucking
I have
bitch.
answered it a million times. No people wants to become a minority in their own country if they don't have to. They shouldn't do it.
Okay, but the people of America
aren't. What does it do to look nice? To be nice? What is your argument? That
I guess when I look at what it means,
and that's not to say that other countries aren't like focusing on any type of social justice. I would argue it's just like a financial accessibility thing that causes you to focus more on social justice, like having the finances to be able to do that. Dude, I should have fucking went and helped this kid sooner.
To be an American. Being white doesn't seem to be part of that definition. So when you say to become a minority, I don't understand this massive division on racial lines. Like, I have to have this many white people in here. If there are too many blacks or browns, it makes me very uncomfortable. Like, I thought we were all Americans. I don't understand where this white, black, brown thing comes from.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you. That is how we should see each other as Americans. I do agree that. But also, we're dealing with something that's not that. We're dealing with a political paradigm, or we were at least. We still are. The status quo thinks that the only logical conclusion to the country to atone for the sins of the white past is to keep letting in people from the third world until white people are a minority. That's what's happening. So if you can deny it all you want, but that's what's happening.
Why are places like California that deal with more immigration than I think any other even individual country in the world
I'm from
aside from
California,
Russia? So why is California the strongest economy in the United States when they have the most Mexican immigrants? Shouldn't this country be a shithole?
Because if you're talking about Los Angeles or Silicon Valley,
talking about the state of California. Why is the state of California the sixth strongest economy in the world when they deal with more Mexican immigrants than any other state? How is this possible?
Man, because all the industry is there. I don't know. What's your point?
Maybe the supply of labor has helped the state grow a little bit. Maybe other people are able to take up complementary positions. Maybe every single economist agrees that immigration grows an economy for everybody. That more people.
I don't know if every single economist.
Pretty much every single economist, even the main leading people who are on the immigration side, more or less agree with that, right? Borjas is the leading economist who argues for less immigration in the United States, and even he acknowledges that.
And every single pollster said Hillary Clinton was going to win.
Do you think that pollsters are of the same academic credence as an academic's analysis of an economic situation? Do you think that's a fair comparison?
We're living in a political paradigm that values appearances over. Of course, these people are going to say that because they don't want the shitstorm.
Wait, of course people are going to say what? That California's economy is huge? Or
no, they're going to say things like, of course, immigration is wonderful. Diversity is our strength. If you don't say these buzzwords.
How do you think you grow an economy if the population begins to die off? Where do you get new workers from?
It's true. It's actually very interesting because if you look at a lot of other countries, and like you look at other Western countries, actually, they're not super immigration heavy. And you see that, like, a lot of talking points, especially from conservatives, is like, oh, look at other countries. Like, oh, yeah, they have all these robust welfare programs, but they're going bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. Or they're losing money. What's happening is that a lot of people, this is a trend for people who have more money, usually, like more middle-class people who are like a little more affluent, I guess. They generally have less kids. And so there's an aging population because there's not enough people to displace that aging. Oh my god, that kid just got fucking nay-nayed. Lick my balls, dude. Are you fucking kidding me? And so like that's the problem with the country that it's going down. Why didn't? Oh, okay. I actually just fucked myself. That's one of the problems is that there's an aging population, and immigration offsets that aging population where there's people who don't want to fill particular parameters and whatnot. They don't want to fill particular jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
Why does an economy have to keep growing forever?
Because that's what our entire economy...
Is John here yet? Nobody's texting me. I'm assuming no.
I mean, it's based off of perpetual growth. I mean, would you be happy if the GDP growth was zero or started to dip into the negatives? Is that a positive thing?
People don't need gadgets all the time, bigger, less expensive gadgets. That's
easy for you to say because you're fucking rich, dog. If you're...
That sounds like communist rhetoric to me. Dog.
Poor dude, and you can all of a sudden afford a cell phone. That's a really cool thing. Why are you advocating for a decrease in the standard of living amongst poor people? Poor people today have TVs, have internet computers, have cell phones. These are awesome things. These should be celebrated.
To be fair, I'm not arguing the economics of this. I'm arguing the cultural impact.
Okay, then we can stay to the culture then. Then don't talk about the economic then, because that's absolutely what nobody on the academic side agrees on. No academic is going to tell you that immigration hurts the economy. No credible one, at least. I've never seen it before. But I mean, we could stay on the culture side, in which case, why do you think...
It's so funny, because all JonTron really needs to say is like, yeah, I think immigration's just happening too fast. That's all he really needs to say. If he believed that, he could be like, yeah, you know what, I think that we need to slow down on immigration in some capacity. Because economists would generally agree immigration is a good thing. It's the speed at which people are migrating that could be a potential problem. But I don't think that JonTron's point is or ever was that there's too much immigration going too fast. It's like just the fundamental idea of people immigrating. That's the issue.
White people are so important to the American identity. Why can't brown and black and all these other people be included as well? Why does it matter if the demographics shift around a little bit?
Because clearly Are you doubting the existence of tribalism?
I think.
Do you believe in it? Do you believe in it or not?
The fact that you are here talking to me, defending white people as a half Iranian, half Hungarian, seems to speak against the notion of tribalism being this like embedded thing that can never be changed. The fact that we are more integrated today than we ever have been, that women and men get along better, that people of different races get along better, that Jim Crow is gone, that all of these things are happening, it seems to point to the fact that we can integrate more as a society.
Are people getting along better? It seems to me they're just screaming at each other a lot recently.
I mean, depending on the news channels you watch, sure, but yeah, I would say that today people.
Twitter. Maybe Twitter is a bit. That's not a news channel, is it?
I would say people getting along worse. It's nothing to do with race as much as to do with class. Honestly, I think that the more money somebody has, the more open they are to people of differences of opinion, et cetera, et cetera. Just life stressors in general. When you're fundamentally super stressed, you generally will close your mind off to things. Fuck, this is not good. I'll be right back. My girlfriend's friends here, my fiance. Be right back. I guess fuck those people in that game.
Your team has destroyed a turret. An ally has been
Back, bitches. Fuck you. Okay.
An enemy
Okay. So many. Oh god. My team's gonna be mad at me for AFKing. Don't report me. Anyway.
I mean, you have a little
Me
bit
and
of
you're screaming
selection.
at each other. Me and you're screaming at each other right now.
I mean, you have a little bit of selection bias, though. I mean, we're specifically looking for somebody we disagree with to talk to. But I mean, like, you can go to large cities in the United States where tons of people from different cultures and different races and different religions all get together and work along with each other.
Of course, because we're not fucking savages, man.
But you're saying that. You're going with tribalism. Like,
what I am saying is that it is principally not wrong to want to keep a continuity in a nation. Every other nation, from Israel to Ethiopia, is awarded this.
I don't care about other countries. I'm American. I care about America.
Okay, well, I don't even know what you're saying. I just disagree with you then.
Okay, so then you think. So then let me try to reframe your argument and tell me if you think that's right. You think it's okay to keep a country from progressing as much as it can in order to maintain a racial identity? Do you think that's an okay thing?
I think. Sorry, one more time on that.
Do you think that it's okay for a country to stifle its growth a little bit in order to maintain a homogenous cultural identity?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Japan does it. They just did a.
Okay, why did you come to the United States instead of going to Japan then?
I didn't come here, dude. I was born here.
Oh, why did your parents come here instead of going to Japan? I don't know. Well, I don't care about Japan. I'm talking about the United States. Like.
Well, no, just ask him, why don't you just go to Japan then or something? Oh, then he would be like, well, it's not white. I like white people. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I'm just using another country as an analogy.
Okay, but that's a country with a totally different set of values or beliefs than us.
So there are different countries with different values and different beliefs? So there are those? They exist?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you mix one country with a certain value system into another one with a certain value system,
we're not mixing countries. There are people coming along
and becoming
American.
Somewhere.
Yeah, and then they become Americans. Their children are Americans.
But the stats don't back you up on that.
Wait, what stats don't? Fucking Trump's mom was fucking Irish. Like, what do you mean the stats don't back you up on
Irish
that?
is European, bro. I don't know what you keep going on about. Look, I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying we can see that there exists some divides when you do this kind of immigration wrong, and you need to have the people assimilate. So it needs to be slow.
But then you say like, okay, it needs to be right. Okay, it needs to be slow. So what does that mean? It
needs to be slow.
Okay, but now you're talking about assimilation. So what if whites became the minority, but most brown people assimilated to the culture? Would that be okay then?
Yeah, but if they assimilated, they would enter the gene pool eventually, and would just, I mean,
become white.
No, not become white, but
what do you mean then?
But that's how it worked. That's how it.
So you're saying that brown people would come over and they would marry themselves off to white people, and then eventually they would all kind of turn white.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. People would be free to choose. But what I'm saying is, like, if you do it slow enough, that the country doesn't have a
color shift
culture.
This is what I'm trying to ask. Let's say that you had 100 million brown people that wanted to come to the United States, and they would all assimilate to the culture immediately, but whites would then become the minority. Would this be a good thing or a bad thing?
If they assimilated immediately, like
they instantly became.
Of course, yes, not a bad thing. Would be fine.
Okay, so even if whites became the minority, then it wouldn't be a bad thing if people integrated. We can agree on that.
Yeah, sure.
Then shouldn't the focus be on?
Works, though.
So shouldn't the focus then be on getting integration to work better rather than just restricting all immigration and hurting the potential economic growth of the country?
This is like saying, why would you do? But why do you need? See, you have some moral ulterior motive.
My moral ulterior.
It's just that's the problem with if again, so like if you want to slow down immigration, I understand it in the context. So like I understand people that come here with different cultures, they act differently. You want to make sure that they assimilate to the United States in some capacity. I get it. That's totally fine. It doesn't really matter their skin color. That's just people in general. So you might want to slow that down without hurting our growth to make sure that we don't have a divided society. That's totally fine. But he's very concerned with how white the population is. And that's the issue. If his fundamental issue is just like, hey, I think we should slow down a little bit. I know to me, rather than that being his actual issue, it seems like that's a talking point he's using to support this general narrative of less non-white people. This motherfucker is up my balls constantly. And I think that's the problem more than anything else. Bro, get the fuck away from me, dude.
Ulterior motive is to maximize the economic growth of the country and to maximize the slice of the pie for every person in the United States. That's my ulterior motive. I want the country to be as successful as it can be and grow as fast as possible.
Okay, hold on. First of all, when I state this argument, it makes me sound like I have a problem with people who aren't white. That's not true. And they don't need to meld in. I'm just talking about the ideal way to do immigration. That's all I'm talking about. I understand we have people here who are white.
It's so because we're an hour into this, and he's just like now he did maybe like 5-10 minutes ago start bringing up this new narrative. It seems like JonTron just kind of shifts what because that's the thing. It's like it started off as like oh, it's not good if we have like a bunch of black people in here, et cetera, et cetera. Or not black people, like Hispanic people, I guess was his general focus. Dude, this is annoying. Was his general focus, and now it's shifted to like, well, I just want to make sure we do it at the right pace. Now that's a fine argument to start off with. I also wish our ADC did damage, but it seems like it's just a new talking point. It's just like, okay, I know that I failed on every one of my other talking points. So like, what's the one I could talk? Okay, like, well, what if we slowed it down? It's like, okay, sure, but that's not your core argument. I think that's to you just a supporting argument to your overall narrative, or it's an attempt, right? We were talking before about how he has a particular idea of the world, and then he's trying to use arguments, like factual arguments. He's trying to use them out of context in a way that supports his overall narrative, and I think that's what it is. His overall narrative isn't, hey, we should slow down immigration to do it slower, so that people have more time to adjust. He's saying specifically that's the reason why we should exclude Hispanic people. Does it make do you understand what I'm trying to say here?
Black and I want them all to feel respected and loved, and of course, like it's ridiculous to think that I don't want that. I'm just talking about the demographic shift. Whites are expected to just lay down and take it, but no other
Okay,
people
but you
do
keep
it.
making this about race. I thought you just said that what really matters was assimilation. Why do we keep going back to whites?
Because I do think race influences culture. I do. I think it does.
Then why do you have black people and Mexican people that exist here that are fully bought into American culture? Has your race influenced your ability to assimilate to American culture?
No, but I mean, why do we have things like Black Lives Matter then?
Because black people experience a disproportionate amount of problems in the United States, and this is a group that's trying to advocate on behalf of those problems to get them fixed.
I mean, I wish that your utopian worldview was the way.
Do you think that black people don't experience a disproportionate amount of problems in the United States?
I'm sure they face issues. Yeah.
That are unique probably to the black community?
I think so. Probably.
Okay, so then that's where then you agree with the existence of Black Lives Matters. That's why they exist, is to advocate on behalf of these people.
No, that's not true though. That just because I would agree that they might have different experience doesn't mean I advocate for Black Lives Matter.
Wait, why? So what do you disagree with?
Well, okay, so you could say like, hey, I don't agree with like Black Lives the way in which Black Lives Matter operates. Sure, like fine. You want to have a disagreement with that, sure, but like you'd still agree with the fundamentals of what Black Lives Matter is trying to do, which is trying to raise awareness for issues that are specific to black people. Yeah, that's it. To raise issues that are exclusive to black people. Ooh, that's actually good. Oh wait, there.
It's for one.
What is their methods? Are you talking about the most extreme rioting that you have seen, like on certain conservative media outlets, or are you talking about the general group altogether?
I didn't see them on conservative media outlets. I saw them with my eyes. What are you talking about? It still happened.
Okay,
yeah,
so should we ban? Do you support hockey
steal
players
that.
or any kind of athletic event? Because people that are into athletic events riot sometimes when their team loses as well.
I absolutely disavow all that kind of violence.
Okay.
But
Okay,
the
and there are a
Black
lot
Lives
of-
Matter movement doesn't disavow violence.
There are a lot of BLM people that disavow violence. Of course there are.
Okay,
If you've
well-
ever watched any of the actual demonstrations, you'll find tons of people walking around with cameras talking about not starting up shit, watch out for agitators, don't live it. There are tons of black people that don't think that they need to go and riot and be violent. That's definitely a
Okay,
thing.
I'm sure that's true, but I have seen.
I'm sure that's true, but it doesn't fit my narrative. So I think that the minority of violent offenders that exacerbate these issues, because there are people who go there just to be fucking rowdy, and then there's a group mentality, and sometimes that shit goes cray. Those are the only ones I want to talk about. That's the
Most of the
All right,
mainstream
guys.
stuff that I've seen hasn't really disavowed that kind of stuff. But that's just my
we're gonna
opinion.
do
That's one
this.
man's opinion. Take it as you will.
Okay, but you don't disagree with maybe the existence of BLM as a thing to address, things that black Americans might feel, disproportionately impacts them in the United States? Like, it doesn't seem to be like the worst idea in the world.
Well, I mean, but they don't actually want to talk about what's causing black lives in America to be affected, which is young black males.
Okay, what's the problem with young black males?
Well, they commit disproportionate amount of crime in the country, and
why do you think
they commit?
Why do they commit a disproportionate amount of crime?
Well, we can go into that forever, and I don't really want to go into it.
So people like you are why BLM exists. What you just said was like so mind-numbingly like arrogant. Like, do you think they just do it because they're black? Because the negroid skull like predisposes them to crime? Well, then why did you laugh there when I asked you that?
Because I don't want to incriminate myself, and because I'm not.
Why are you so scared of saying something that's going to come off as racist? Don't you think that's a little bit predictive of?
You're like going on a what's one of those talk shows where they try to trap you.
Do you feel like,
dude, this is cringy as fuck. Like it would just be better if JonTron's like, you know what, I'm racist. It would just be better because at least then we know where he stands. I think that's one of the big problems. Is that like I don't think that like people of color. I mean, obviously being racist is bad, but the bigger issue is when people try to like pretend they're not racist. And this is like one of those things, bro. Like, what's wrong with black males? Like, yes, they commit a disproportionate amount of crime, but again, we've also established that there are multiple environmental factors that cause people to commit more crimes, right? So I think it's a reasonable assumption to say like, while those people obviously have like personal accountability and autonomy, that there are situations within their environment that cause them to act to be more, I guess you'd say, violent or commit more crimes. It's not really a hot take. Like, if I was poor, I would fucking kill people for money so I could feed my family. I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's just kind of the reality of the world. Fortunately, I'm not poor. Fortunately for all you motherfuckers, because I'd be fucking killing all of you. I'm big as fuck. But all jokes aside, like, yeah, I mean, come on. Like, basic levels of empathy, man.
You should go on CNN, dude. You should work for CNN.
So the problem is young black men in the United States are disproportionately born to single mother households, which is a leading indicator of crime. They're also disproportionately born into ghettos and low-income housing areas. They have access to worse education, okay? They're born into horrible socioeconomic conditions. All of these things are massive contributors to being a criminal as you grow up. When you control
But you are making the argument that it's like white people that put them in those situations.
Because they kind of sort of did over the past like 200 years.
Like historically, white people did do that. I understand why you'd be upset with that take, I guess, if you're heavily identified with your whiteness instead of your, Well, actually, I guess you could say it's Americans who did that. That's usually where I come from more than anything else. Is I usually come through the idea, how the fuck did I just thread the needle so bad there? You fucking bitch. I'm killing you. I don't give a shit. Oh my god, this guy's invincible. Dude, this guy's a fucking plat player, clearly. I don't know.
They kind of brought him over as slaves. They kind of bred him a certain way. They kind of, redlined
black people did sell black people as slaves. This doesn't really matter.
Them and gentrified them out of certain neighborhoods and certain.
Because even if you acknowledge that point, the black people who are still here are still victims. Even if you don't want to make it a racial thing, which it is, they're still like victims of being like historically being enslaved.
Communities, they kind of legally discriminated on them and put them all in certain areas for a long time. They kind of disproportionately policed them and sentenced them to higher crimes in the courts and whatnot. Like, white people have contributed a lot to this.
So I suppose that's why the crime rates are pretty consistent across Africa too.
We're not talking about Africa. We're talking about the United States.
We're never talking about anything with you.
We're always talking about the United States. It seems like every time I have a point about the U.S., you want to go and move to another continent.
I feel like Africa, that would be a supporting argument though for Destiny. Like, oh, Africa has violence there as well. What's crazy about Africa? It's also poor, right? And the whole leading narrative is that like in poverty is a leading factor in people doing bad things. It kind of supports the narrative. And then there's also imperialism in Africa. And like Destiny was saying, it's a very complicated conversation to have. But like you see how there seems to be an influence of white people in a black area that has a negative impact on that black area, right? Just saying.
No, because man, you are not living in reality.
What? I'm not like, can you name 5 countries in Africa?
Yeah, of course I can name 5 countries in Africa. South Africa, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe.
I couldn't, just being honest with you.
Zimbabwe, Nigeria,
Is Nigeria in Africa? I feel like somebody yelled at me for saying that once. Hold on. Maybe it is. I think maybe it's like... I feel like I got yelled at for it. It is. So maybe it was another country. Maybe it was Haiti? I don't know. I'm fucking dumb when it comes to this shit.
All right, you got it. You did it. Okay. I don't know why going to Africa to talk about their problems is somehow like a valid indicator of things going on in the United States.
Look. This is ultimately... I feel like you're trying to catch me in some sort of racist gotcha.
I'm not trying to catch you. Why do you feel that way?
It's because...
was maybe Haiti's in the Caribbean? Okay, maybe that's what I said. One time I said like Haiti. Maybe I said Haiti was in Africa or something stupid, and somebody's like, "Papa, you're a fucking idiot." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough." Wow, I'm just being... Listen, I'm not really ashamed of my ignorance, because if I don't say something dumb, how the fuck am I gonna get corrected on it? That's why I know that Haiti isn't in Africa. That's why I stream all my content live, so you guys can be like, "Papa, you're fucking stupid as shit." And I go like, "Good point, bro." You're really just helping me, honestly, when it comes down to it. You think you're yelling at me is hurting me. It's actually helping me a lot.
I am not saying that the country needs to be 100% white. I'm not saying that black people are not as good as white people. I'm not saying brown people aren't as good as white people.
So then why don't you want to address it when I ask you, why do you think young black men commit more crime than white people? Why are you scared to answer that?
Well, because, it's a taboo subject.
How is
but,
it taboo?
and
None of the things that I just said are taboo. What else is there to discuss?
Because look, here's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that if you're asking John the human being, what is it that you would like? I would like every person to have the best possible life on the planet. That's genuinely what I want. Now, to what degree we can do that, that's the separate question.
This guy really is just saying like a lot of weird communist shit. If you're a fucking, what a fucking lefty piece of shit JonTron is. Am I right, guys?
In order to figure out how much we can do it, we have to identify the causes of the problems, because until we remedy the causes of the problems themselves won't be fixed.
But we've been hearing this single motherhood thing for decades, and it's getting a bit tired. I think that's why you're seeing this rise in all these quote-unquote Nazis that you're seeing.
What do you mean? We've been hearing this single motherhood thing. Single mother. It's so hard. No, well, let's not even say single motherhood. Single parenthood is a massively defining factor in the success of a child. I don't understand. Honestly, I had a lot of father figures. Like I had my uncle, and like even like my scoutmaster. Like that's, I would argue, is one of the biggest reasons that I was doing so well. Like, especially my uncle. Like he stepped in a lot. How the fuck is, what the fuck?
That everyone's seeing everywhere, like they took acid and they're seeing bugs crawling out of the woodwork or something.
Wait, so what do you think is the reason why young black men disproportionately commit crime in the United States?
Well, at this point, it doesn't really matter.
But then how do we fix it? Do we just kill them all or deport them all?
No, of course, kill them all. You see, why? Perhaps you're the one with the depraved mind. Because why do you go to kill them? Why do you go there? Because on some level, is that what you want? I mean, why the fuck do you kill them?
You're not leaving me any options, John. You're saying
they commit more crime. Kill them all.
You're literally saying they commit more crime. I don't know why they do it. Fuck it. We can't do anything to fix it. That's what you're saying. So what's the solution then? You have no solutions.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when white people are aggressed against in their own nations by people who are not white, and they're told constantly, check your privilege. You colonized us. You
privilege checked, bitch. I re-up for it every year, brother.
owe us this land. Blah 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 blah. But you heard it all.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about identifying root causes of problems in the black community and trying to fix and remedy those problems.
You're just going off on tangents, dude. Look, there's one thing I came here to talk to you about. Why is it bad for white people to resist their own demographic displacement? That is the only thing I'm here to discuss.
And your only answer was tribalism.
I made my point. What?
And your only answer was tribalism.
No, I explained other things as well. When people, let's say the French see an influx of Islamic migrants who come in and say, you don't give us good enough handouts, you're being racist to us, and then they're rioting. What are the French supposed to think exactly? They're supposed to think
I'm not French. I'm American. We were talking about America. Why have we gone across the seas again?
All intertwined. It's the same situation, but they speak a different language. I don't know why this is so hard for you.
Because it's not the same situation. Those countries are in dramatically different situations. You can't compare them.
That's like you're saying a man ate a sandwich in France and a man ate a sandwich in America, but these are not the same situations.
We're not talking about a basic thing like eating and consuming.
Let me tell you something. A sandwich in France is probably better for you because I remember listening to people from Europe actually talk about how sweet our bread is because we're such a fat fucking nation. So there actually are very different sandwiches, just letting you know.
Food. We're talking about the complex interaction and crossroads between culture and demographics and economy and geography. These are very complicated, high-level social issues that manifest themselves in far different ways across different countries. We're not just talking about eating food.
You speak pretty, my friend, but you haven't convinced me. I don't know if you may have convinced your viewers. I think they're probably on your side, but that's what happens when you go off home turf. Look, you can speak flowery language about all this stuff, but you bring up
Destiny wasn't even speaking. What's so funny is that some of the things he said would probably get him called a racist by people. Like when he took the stance that imperialism in Africa has had there have been ups and downs on it. But there has been a positive impact for people in Africa. That's not something that somebody that's trying to parrot or use flowery language would say. Most people would be too afraid to even make that point. They'd be like, no, it was terrible, 100%. But he's like, no, you know what? There are aspects of it that's true. You can't make the argument that he's really just trying to virtue signal when he quite literally is saying things that would get him fucking heat from lefties. It doesn't really make any sense. JonTron's fucking dumb, honestly.
You bring up the Irish and the Italians when it's convenient, but
what do you mean when it's convenient? I brought up the Irish Italians to disprove your points about tribalism. That at one point in time they weren't seen as being included as Americans or white people, and now they are. So it seems like
it's not true that they weren't considered white people.
It is absolutely true. Please, okay, just make me promise one thing. If I haven't changed my mind on anything else, please go read a little bit about early struggles of immigrants and fucking Ellis Island and all that shit, because this was a very real thing in the United States. Before you talk, because people will catch you on this in the future if they try to do gotcha moments. You absolutely need to read a little about this. Okay, Irish people and plenty of other immigrants around the late 1800s, early 1900s in the United States experienced a ton of discrimination, racial discrimination. All right, you have to just look into this. Okay, you don't agree with me now.
Look, I know that there was some discrimination there, and by the way, yeah, it's wrong. Discrimination is wrong. We have gotten rid of discrimination in our West.
I can't believe. See, he's not racist. He's saying discrimination is wrong. See, guys, we just had to watch an hour and 15 minutes worth of this to figure it out. He's not racist. Discrimination is wrong, except for racial discrimination.
No, we haven't. What do you mean?
If you don't think we've got rid of discrimination, you're living in a fantasy land.
How do you explain things like the voter ID laws in North Carolina, or how you?
What's voter ID laws in North Carolina? Get out of here with that.
What?
right,
Get out of here with what?
People like me are supposed to listen to people like you chatter on about this oppression in America. It doesn't exist, dude. It doesn't exist. There's
What are
no
you talking
oppression.
about? You don't think that there's any oppression in any part of the United States against any group of people ever?
What do you want to do? Police people's thoughts? By law,
No, how about their actions?
we do that. It's called having a police force, something that Somalia doesn't really have much of. So, what's your point?
Fuck.
I'm not sure. All right, well, listen, dude. I
think you are correct on that. I think you aren't sure.
No, I mean, I know exactly what I'm talking about, but I feel like I don't. I mean, if you don't think that anybody experiences any disproportionate oppression or any kind of issues in any parts of the United States.
Sure, they do, but we can't take on all the world's problems at once.
Well, I'm the one that just wants to talk about the United States.
I maintain that the United States and Europe are interconnected, at least spiritually. So,
all right, I knew somebody was gonna have an issue. Voter ID. So voter ID laws. I'm gonna do a quick rundown on voter ID laws because it actually is like some form of systemic oppression. Now, this. Oh my God, I can't speak. Voter ID laws do disproportionately negatively impact Black people. Generally speaking, Republicans try to suppress the votes of people who would normally vote Democrat so that they can win in some of these areas where they implement voter ID laws. The people who happen to be poor are Black. I call it, a form of systemic racism. You can call it a form of systemic oppression if you want to. I don't really care. But generally speaking, what they'll do is it's not that they're asking for identification. Because here's my thing. I would ask you this. If you believe we should implement voter ID laws, and if the only issue that people... Okay, so if you believe we should implement voter ID laws, and the number one contention is like, well, some people can't afford it, then why isn't your next step saying, okay, we're going to give out free IDs to everybody, right? That's the point, because it's not just about that. It's about targeting particular voting patterns to suppress it, right? So, for instance, there's areas that I think it was in Georgia. I don't remember specifically, but this was more recently. I think it was after this video, where they were trying to target the voting patterns, right? So, for instance, a lot of the people in that area, they happen to be Black, but it doesn't matter if they're Black. It just matters that their votes are getting suppressed. They didn't really have a lot of transportation access or access to transportation. So they would go on Sunday with their churches. They would go to church. There would be a church bus and they would go. Well, they want to get rid of voting on Sundays. Okay. Then there are people who work a lot, 9 to 5s. The voting used to be 7 to 7. Well, they want to cut down from the 7 to 7 down to like 9 to 5 so that they can't vote. The lines are long because since it's a poor area, there's not a whole lot of places to vote. Well, they want to not make it so that you can have like sell food or drink on the line or something, right? Even on Fox News, they've acknowledged this, not on the performative version of it, but like Christopher Wallace has acknowledged that it's a form of systemic racism. He may not have explicitly said that, but he said it's definitely a form of voter suppression in some capacity. So this is the thing that you guys have to be aware of. Like, yeah, it's meant the way that they try to suppress voter people voting is through ways that are open to interpretation by people. So you might be a little bit more conservative minded, be like, oh, they're just trying to save money, or like, oh, because it makes sense to have a voter ID. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But they don't add the all they have to do is be like, okay, we're giving them out for free. Why don't they give them out for free? Oh, we don't have the money. Okay, well, what the fuck? You know, understand what I'm saying? You know, it's always an excuse, and a lot of times money seems to be an excuse to suppress people's God-given, constitutional right in America. Don't you think that's like a little curious, right? Don't you think that's a little suspicious? That's the thing. And it's not just how much it costs to get an identification. It's how do you get to. It's not just the cost of the identification. It's the lack of access to get to the DMV. I live in New York. There's a DMV in every fucking 30 minutes away from every. It doesn't matter where you are on Long Island. There's a DMV within 30 minutes. In other places, that just doesn't exist. That's the thing, right? So IDs by me are like $60, $70, right? Which is a lot of money. Not for me because I'm rich. I'm like fucking roll. I'm just kidding. I'm not rich. But like, it's not. I don't know why I keep saying that. It's like a fucking weird joke. But like, they're $60. That's a lot of money, man. When I wasn't doing as well, that's a fucking make or break for my whole fucking week. Honestly, that was a make or break for my whole fucking week, man. I remember being like struggling like paycheck to paycheck, and like $20 expense would depress the fuck out of me. I remember when like my fucking tires would pop, I would like cry. It was terrible. You know what I mean? Because I would be fucked out of the ass. It's fucked up, man. Shit's fucked up. I remember having one of my cars, and I had a leak in my tire. Thankfully, I worked at like a shop because I cleaned buses, and I would always be able to fill it up every single day for months. You know. So
I don't know why that's
yeah. So if you're making like fucking $7.50 an hour, imagine working your whole day just to get a fucking ID and you need to have other expenses. Like if you make $10,000 a year, let's say it's untaxed, You still have to pay for like your rent, your food, everything, clothing, all the shit. So it's not really a simple like, oh, it's only $60. It's only $60, bro. If you fucking making like, if you're making like $20-$30 an hour. But I was making like $25, well, like $23 an hour, and I was still struggling because I'm in New York and I had like a bunch of other circumstances. Like somebody I was with wasn't working, and like, you know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of shit going on, right?
Controversial to say, I really don't understand it.
I would highly encourage you to talk to Europeans then, I guess, or talk to your parents, because they will tell you completely different things. Countries in Europe do not all what?
I guess you know what my parents think then?
Your parents are from the Middle East, correct? Or what did you say? One was from Iran? Ask him how similar Iran is to Iraq, or how similar Iran is to Israel, or how similar Iran is to even Saudi Arabia or the Gulf states. He's not going to tell you that, oh, you know, it's all in the Middle East, right? Would your dad say that?
Of course not. And I've been to Iran, so I don't know if you've ever been outside your house. But
okay, so if you took a guy from Iran, you've been
he just told him to touch grass.
there, right? If you take a guy, an Iranian, and you put him aside a Saudi Arabian, do you think that these people would identify as both being, you know, yeah, we're both Middle Eastern?
No. Iranians and Saudi Arabians are very different, but what's your point? So then that's a good argument for Saudi Arabians not to occupy Iran, isn't it?
No, I'm just saying that these people don't all identify as being the same, even though they're from a similar region, much the same way that Europeans don't identify as being European.
Yes, but would you argue that a Turk and an Iranian are going to be able to assimilate to one's culture easier than a Hungarian and a Romanian? Or those two would be able to assimilate easier than the other way around, I mean.
I mean,
it's fine if it's assimilate easier, but it doesn't mean we should keep people from assimilating it.
It depends on the reasons for moving. It depends on the situation. Like, I don't know. I'm not talking about their ability to integrate.
I've never been to Iran because I'm overweight. You get it? Because I'm fat and I don't run. That's a dad joke.
Just talking about how people identify themselves. You're telling me that I don't understand, I guess, anything about the world, and you're very quick to lump like all Europeans in together with one another, when I don't think there are any Europeans that would say that.
You're differentiating between people when it's convenient, like when it's in Iran or Saudi Arabia, but when it comes to white countries, there's no difference. We have no culture. It's just all up for grabs. So it's one or the other. And people like you you just bounce around when it's convenient for you. That's why your arguments aren't rooted in any sort of consistency or fact.
All right. I understand. Do you have any? I'll give you the closing words if you want. We're already way past it.
No, nothing. I genuinely appreciate you debating me. If I'd love to be proven wrong. No, thanks for at least having the balls to talk about what you believe in.
Sure, I appreciate it. Yeah, same to you. It's always nice to have a conversation with someone I disagree with. So good luck with your endeavors and everything.
You too, man. Hey, thank you for having me on. And rip my career. All right, see you guys.
See you later.
All right, see you.
That part's certainly true. I'm not gonna watch the rest where Destiny talks. About the thing. It's just gonna be like a recap of what's going on. As you can see, though, very clearly, that is why people are fucking going crazy on JonTron. And I kind of want to reinforce it because somebody did ask me before, do I think that JonTron like actively is like racist? I really don't. I think that he's just very, very, very ignorant. I think that like there's a lot of people in general, but like a lot of Americans who have particular ideas, and they don't express their racism because they understand that like they know that it's wrong, but they still have some racist thoughts, and they still do police their actions, which is a step in the right direction. And I think that we should give that. I don't think he's actively like hates immigrants or anything. I think that he's just really fucking dumb when it comes to these issues, and he's very hard-headed and he's very arrogant and ignorant, which are obviously a recipe for disaster. That doesn't justify it. I'm not saying that like it's okay what he like all of his shit was okay. I'm just saying that I think that there's a difference between somebody who is ignorant and somebody who is like actively trying to promote like a narrative. I think that JonTron's just ignorant. Now maybe that's my bias because I like JonTron's videos. Well, I used to like his videos. You know, everybody falls off. You know, I'm gonna fall off like give it a week. Some people just burn out. Really, I don't want to say fall off because that's like a negative connotation, but I don't know. Either way, you guys understand what I'm saying. This is why people are still going after him. There you go. I will say one thing. I don't know why the fuck he unlisted that one video response instead of just getting rid of it. I don't know. Do I think that he's grown in the past 4 or 5 years? That's a good question. So I probably not. It's possible. Here's my thing. Like when you look at his Twitter, it's still pretty conservative, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with being a conservative, but I would generally assume that he really hasn't. He's my age. He's 31. Growth doesn't really happen as much when you get to my age. I mean, I'm not even jerking myself off. I feel like I do substantially more growth when it comes to my opinions than most other 31-year-olds. I don't think that's a hot take to say. That's kind of like what I do. I try to be like a little more socially aware of shit, and I grow both directions. Like sometimes there are some areas where I got a little more conservative and some areas where I got more progressive. It's different. You know, I don't think that he's changed his shit though. He's on Twitter, like, you know, being a little, like, still spouting some like conservative ideology. It's possible though, but from what I just showed, like all of the responses are pretty bad. So, you know. Now we can move on. I can raise my microphone sound.